Almost done. Okay, everybody, we are live.
Great. We're live. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting to order. We have a quorum this evening. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get going with the agenda, I'd like to start this meeting by thanking the community and staff of the Weston Public Schools during these incredibly challenging times. The state and federal guidance has been very slow at times, while at other times it comes suddenly and unexpectedly, causing us to change course midstream. Our staff's flexibility and understanding have been critical to our success in developing our plans. We have communicated with the town and staff as best we can while continuing to plan for an unprecedented fall this reopening. We recognize that the speed and substance of the information was dissatisfying to you at various points. And for this, we appreciate your patience. As we moved to building level communication last week by the principals and the staff, we're confident that most of your questions and concerns have been or will be addressed. We recognize that these are significant decisions that will impact each of you professionally, educationally, economically, and emotionally. With that being said, there's no solution that will make every Weston resident or staff perfectly happy. We need to strike a balance between public health and education, and we believe our hybrid model accomplishes this. Our board and administration have worked tirelessly to develop and implement curriculum with appropriate social distancing and remote learning components. It's been a monumental task, and Weston administrators and staff have been working around the clock. Teachers are the backbone of this district and what makes Weston an incredible place to live and educate our children. There has been considerable press across the state about how our teachers have not been included in the reopening process. Teachers have been included in this fall reopening process. 2 teachers have been on the reopening task force from the very beginning several months ago, as well as 2 additional teachers per building assigned to work at each building with the administration to address building-specific reopening plans. In addition, the curriculum instructional leaders have been actively involved in designing the curriculum. And we are working very closely with the teachers union to address their concerns that have been brought to us on August 12th. We feel that this has been a good balance of input without being too large of a group to inhibit critical work getting accomplished. However, there's always room for improvement, and we continue to strive for that. This will only work if we all work together, board, administration, staff, parents, and students. And we look forward to a successful reopening under the hybrid model and seeing our staff and students reunited in person, even from 6 feet away. Thank you. And with this, let's move to the approval of minutes. Actually, if any of the other board members have any comments they'd like to make at the opening piece, feel free to do so before we actually move to the approval of minutes.
Tony, thanks for those remarks. I appreciate everything you're saying. And I'd just like to add that, I understand from the public's perspective how challenging it can be to have a question at any given point, and with the social media that's at your fingertips and the ability to ask your peers in the community for support and answers. Most of the time that's a helpful process, but sometimes when the complete information isn't there, it stops being as helpful as it can be. So I encourage anybody that has a question or anything that they're not sure about to email me or anybody on the board for answers to those questions before you post something on social media that may not be completely accurate. This is a time where we've decided on the plan and we need to move forward with the plan, and we all need to work together in the best interest of the students, the staff, and the town. So please send me any questions and I will get to them as best I can.
Yeah, and I just want to say like a word that anybody who's been in a meeting with me lately has heard me say over and over again: collaboration. The only way this district is going to be able to make this work is if everybody is willing to collaborate. And part of being a good collaborator is communicating in appropriate manners with who you need to communicate with. It's going to take our families encouraging and making sure their children are following social distance rules. We see right next door in Wilton, a significant group of seniors engaged in an activity that is now possibly endangering the opening of that district. It's going to take, an intense amount of flexibility. We can only do this if we all work together and we communicate with each other in respectful ways. There will be absolutely no way that 100% of the people involved in this are going to be 100% happy. Everyone is doing the best they can to reach a compromise situation that gives the students in Weston the best possible education in the safest way possible for all of our students and our staff. And so again, I'm just going to say it. We all have to work together, and it means communicating to the appropriate people in a respectful way. We can do this if we work together.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Gina.
The only thing I would add, Tony, and everyone, is the word I use is humility. I think we all need to remember that. And also, the phrase I repeat is that we're all making decisions at home, at work, with our families, with imperfect information. So let's keep that in mind. And to Melissa's point, let's channel the questions to the right people, right? Let's not inference. I'm on the facilities subcommittee meeting. I'm on the finance subcommittee meeting. We've all made ourselves available, but let's please channel the questions to the people that are likely to be most informed on the subject at hand.
With that, let's go to the approval of minutes. Any comments or questions on the minutes? Can I have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the minutes from the June 15th, 2020 Board of Education meeting.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye, Ruby.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Taffy.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Hillary.
Hi, Victor.
Aye, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Now we have public comment. Now I'm assuming, Meredith, all of the comments have been actually submitted by now? Oh, you're on mute.
I have one comment to read as of this evening.
Oh, okay. So the way that it works in public comment is that it's limited to 3 minutes. And so if we have a long submission, we'll read it until we get to the 3-minute point, and then the entire submission will be put into the record as well.
I think I can do it in 3 minutes.
Great.
But I will, I'm sorry. And as a note, I will include the entirety of the question or the comment. I will include that at the end of the meeting minutes as well, just so that we have it in its entirety written into the minutes.
Tony, just one other process comment, and that is, if other comments come in, because the system of public comment is, not new, but kind of new for a lot of people, and they may not have logged on and submitted their comment yet. If others come through over the course of the meeting, might we have just another 10-minute session at the end to read those?
I don't think any will come through. I think it's closed now, right? I mean, Meredith, why don't you go, if you take a second and go through the process?
So the process is we have a 10-minute before the meeting is open, where the form is open for people to submit their written questions. Once it's closed, from that standpoint, our process has always been public comment is at the beginning of our agenda. We read public comment, and as you know, public comment is truly only that. It is.
I know, yeah.
So I feel badly for those who want answers, but so that's how we do it. We generally do not go back and then read public comment after the fact. I may suggest if someone had a public comment or question, that they in turn turn that question to the board themselves, any one of the members of the board at least, so that whatever that they were asking is being heard, and if there's if something that needs further elaboration, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess if there, to make it easy, if there's something that comes up in the meeting that the public wants some more elaboration, just email the administration or one of the board members, and we'll try to answer it best we can.
Tony, if I may add, as the board knows, but we may, because of the advantages of Zoom, may have more people observing a meeting than usual. What we tried to do several months ago was to replicate, for the great value of this board in its bylaws and its policies, places on public comment. We tried to replicate what the real in-person meetings are like in this format. And so that's what we do have. Public comment, as Meredith said, is always at the beginning. The board has a posted, established agenda, and that's really important that the board stays to that agenda, because the community's seen that agenda. They know what's on the agenda, but certainly comments after a meeting might inform the board to build a different agenda for next month. And then that agenda is posted. And the reason, it may sound a little rigid, but it's actually to ensure and protect public involvement. Because if a board is suddenly off on an agenda item not posted, nobody's been warned, nobody's been advised. And so we were very careful working with legal counsel to replicate our in-person meetings in this format. But we value the public comments, we value the questions. I think, as Meredith put it, if there's something that's not answered or addressed in this meeting, send it to a board member. We ask that they get that to the administration. And we are trying to work as fast as possible to get information back to you.
My question was a technical one. It was that folks might not be able to get into that 10-minute window that you've allotted for sending along their public comments. And I don't need to do anything more about this tonight, but it's something for us to think about next time, that because we have technology challenges for folks, that they get on 10 minutes early and make their public comment. It's harder than the in-person replicated model. So we don't need to discuss it any further, but it's something to think about for next time.
Yep. Well, I just hope most of the town has power this evening.
Thank you.
Why don't you go to public comment then?
All right, here we go. The public comment that we have this evening is from Greg and Jed Haythorne, 6 Winthrop Hill. And it says, thanks to all the board members and administrators for your continued efforts at a safe reopening. As a result of your hard work, we are very hopeful for the coming school year. Please address the following this evening for the following agenda items. 1, weekly enrollment update. In addition to the number of new and pending student registrations in Snapshot, please advise on the number of anticipated net students withdrawn for any reason, including homeschooling, if any. And as of this evening, the total number of students that have opted out for VDL. Number 2, spring closure savings, final accounting and transfers, non-lapsing account. Please advise on the implications of the non-lapsing account mechanism relative to the state of Connecticut MBR legislation. And A, Please update also on the credits from vendors still pending to the district that are in addition to the now 777,000 identified net closure savings realized this past spring. 3, spread transportation costs. Given last year's significant cost overrun, please provide an update on corrective solutions for the coming year and projected full year sped transportation expense. 4, additional teacher hiring. Please share the board's analysis of the pros and cons of hiring additional teachers for classrooms that will more than half empty relative to traditional class size guidelines versus the benefits and risks of strategically relaxing those class size guidelines temporarily on a trial basis while in hybrid operating mode. 5, COVID emergency funding. In additional to the 343,000 in emergency funds already committed to Weston, please share the maximum funding calculated by the district central office for which Weston ultimately will be eligible from all qualifying programs. In other words, how much has Weston been denied that it has applied for, if anything? And have we begun the appeal or resubmission process? And how much more is the district pursuing in additional funding from these and other programs such as FEMA? Thank you again, great work.
Thanks, Meredith. Was that it for tonight? Thanks. Let's move to new business. Bill, resignations, or Ken?
Yeah, I can handle this. We are just for the board acceptance of the resignation of Rachel Scandura, who's been a speech and language pathologist at the high school. It's standard for us to bring these resignations to the board solely for an acceptance. And there is a motion related to this.
Can we have a motion, please?
Move that the Weston Board of Education accept the resignation of Rachel Scandura, Weston High School speech and language pathologist.
Second?
Okay.
All in favor?
Hi,
Let's
Melissa.
start. Okay.
Hi, Taffy. Hi, Hillary.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Victor.
Ruby? Aye, Tony. All opposed? Motion passes by majority. Ruby will be, how do we view that, as abstaining?
Yeah, it'll be an abstention because she was
Right,
transitioning between her car and her home.
okay. Let's move to the next item, which is the Phil, the fiscal year 20 year-end financial update and approval of transfers.
Sure. How's everyone doing? Moving into the final update for fiscal 20. For fiscal year 20, we will end the year having spent approximately 98.53% of our budget, or $52,296,142. This will leave a fund balance of $777,568. Included in this amount is an anticipated refund from our transportation provider for a student in the amount of $85,278. This is the only anticipated refund that we will get from other vendors. The reason for this is we prepay for our transportation cost. All other refunds / credits that we would have had were in the form of credits, which were already factored into the fund balance for FY20. Just a quick note. So we're going to end the year approximately $177,568 above our targeted balance that we had discussed and promised to the town that was used to offset our FY21 budget. It's my recommendation that we do request for the Board of Finance to establish a non-lapsing account for the difference of 177,568. We did have preliminary conversation with the Board of Finance this past week, I believe. So the days are blurring right now. Just and also the impact of COVID-19 on fiscal 21. Any question on the financials?
Phil, a couple of things. One is that we do have 177,000 and change over and above what was anticipated that we're looking at having in a non-lapsing account. I think the Board of Finance, while they were sympathetic to it, needs to really understand the mechanism by which they need to establish that and approve it. Also, just for everyone's, so everyone understands it, this is not for the Board of Education to just use in whatever manner they will, they see fit. It's something where we would go back to the Board of Finance and discuss exactly how we're going to use the non-lapsing account, especially as it relates to COVID-related expenses. So it's not, it will have some controls around it, and those controls will be Board of Finance controls.
Correct. In addition to that, Tony, the establishment of the non-lapsing account would have no impact on our MBR. Mm-hmm. This is something completely entirely separate from that function.
Phil, can you just talk about, broadly speaking, where the additional 177,000 came from?
Sure. So when we last met, we did mention at a time that the year wasn't closed, and the part of the year-end process was just a closing of different open POs that we have for expenditures that were no longer going to be incurred. The main drivers for this primarily has to do with contracts relating to special education. So we did make, as you guys know, the process that we have for the various individual contracts is that when Mike was here, and we're doing the same thing with Tracy, whenever we thought that something was about to happen, we would reserve certain funds for those. We do believe that because of COVID-19, a lot of what we anticipated did not come to fruition. And I just want to point out that I'm a little bit concerned about that of the impact that will have on our FY21 expenditures, but that's still to be seen. It's still definitely too early for that. But really, the main drivers for that really just had to do with the closing of open encumbrances that we have, but primarily driven in large part by special education.
Mm-hmm. Any questions from the board?
Just around the conversations with Board of Finance for the establishment of the lapsing account, what, since there are restrictions about how the funds would be accessed and what the funds would be used for, what is the main sticking point to being able to move forward with that plan?
Okay, Tony, go ahead.
It's never been done before, and they need to understand legally how they will actually set it up and do it.
Right.
I mean, it's really more of a technical matter than anything else. But Phil, maybe you can elaborate.
No, that's probably the main reason. It's the first time that this has been done in Weston, and they had a few questions that Jonathan Louise was going to bring to the attorney, and they were set to reconvene to have a discussion and this Thursday, I do believe. Mm-hmm. So so this is just pending further discussion and just an overall understanding of all the mechanism that need to be put in place surrounding this account. In other districts, if I may, in other districts, the way this works is that the board of Ed in Westport, for example, there's a certain dollar amount that the board was able to spend annually without prior approval from the Board of Finance. After that amount has been reached, any additional funding needed to be approved by the Board of Finance. The structure of the non-lapsing account really is all set in how in pretty much how it's established and what the permit for us for this year, since it's the first time, and the main reason why we are making this request is to fund the unanticipated expenditures related to reopening and COVID-19. Okay, moving to the Internal Services Fund. We're going to end, we had a budgeted budget for the Internal Services Fund, which is used to pay dental claims of $352,500. We will end the year with expenditures totaling $379,851, and we will end the year with a fund balance of $1,157,506.
Where do we anticipate this at the end of next year? I think, is it 300 lower or?
No, I think it was close to 400,000 that we did establish in this account for FY 21-20.
400.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think it was close to 400. Right. I do want to point out, or do just to put it out there, that we're seeing, or just in general, a lot of entities are increasing their costs just to recoup the additional expenditures that they incur relating to PPEs and those kind of sanitation relating to COVID-19. Because of this, we do anticipate an uptick in the costs for dental claims and the broad sense as we move forward, possibility in health insurance claims and the cost for health insurance for FY21 and beyond.
I'm sorry. I didn't get all that.
You were a little muffled on some of those things, Bill.
I'm so sorry, guys. All right, is this better?
Yeah, much better.
Perfect. So I wanted to point out that because of COVID-19, we're definitely anticipating an uptick to the costs associated with just delivering medical services, whether it be dental or just pure health. My concern for FY21, because of companies or dental services or healthcare providers, in an effort to recoup the additional costs surrounding COVID-19 and PPE, sanitation and stuff like that, we do anticipate that there will be an uptick in claim costs on both the health and the dental, which may transition into for both FY21 and beyond.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions on Internal Services Fund?
If there's no questions, can I have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the FY 2020 year-end financial update and the approval of transfers.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Hi, Ruby.
I'm Melissa.
Hi, Hillary.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Victor.
Daffy.
Hi, Tony. All opposed? Motion passes. Phil, you're still up.
I know. So before we get to FY impact for COVID for FY21, I do think that just as a process, I'm not quite sure, Bill, we had this quick discussion, if the board should vote and just authorizing the request to be made to the Board of Finance to establish a non-lapsing account.
That isn't a specific agenda item.
It is an agenda item.
It is.
Okay. Yeah, instead of voting to move it up, let's just take these agenda items as they come.
Okay, sorry, I didn't realize it was a separate item.
Yep.
Yeah, there was a logic. We thought that going through FY20, then the COVID-19 might help the board then better understand the merits of the non-lapsing account.
Sure. All right, my lights are flickering, so hopefully it will not go out. FY21 and the impact for COVID-19. As you guys can probably imagine, we do anticipate having maybe not significant costs, but definitely some costs overall as it relates to COVID-19. And additional costs, which are more significant, just surrounding reopening. I just want to walk through a few of those items and what those costs are. We do anticipate overall on the gross level, needing an additional 1.5% of our current budget allocation of our approximately $836,000. Main drivers for that is surrounding technology-related costs. This involves the toolkits that were purchased for the teachers. Some of those items that were included in that toolkit had to do with the Zoom licenses and with the cameras that we did purchase for the teachers, which would allow us greater flexibility for whatever model we are in. Health and safety costs of approximately $73,000. Curriculum, summer planning, and professional development of approximately $14,000. A big cost that we do anticipate for COVID and is surrounding the cleaning of our facilities of approximately $256,000. And primarily this cost right now is a cost that it would cost the district if the district would hire 4 additional custodians. We're currently in negotiations with ASME to find an alternative to hiring district employees. Another cost that we do incur, I do anticipate is a supplemental funding for the food service program. As you guys know, the food service program is a standalone entity, which is pretty much, which is self-funded. Because of the reduced meals that we do anticipate being served next year or this current year, we do anticipate that we will have to supplement that program. The 68,000 figure that's here is above and beyond the fund balance of 90,000 or so that is currently in that program. The daily cleaning of the buses of approximately $19,000. This number here is the assumption that the buses will be cleaned at least 4 times per day. We do realize that the time between each year is very limited, and as much as we will try, but because of the definite tightness of our schedule, we may not be able to get it for 4, but the goal is to definitely get it for 4. Another significant cost that we do anticipate for FY21 is addition of sections for grade 1 and the previously approved grade 3 section at the West, grade 1 at Hurlbut and grade 3 at West. In addition to the costs, we do anticipate that we will not be receiving anticipated revenue offsets. As you guys know, we're not planning to have, if we do have a season, which from all indications we have, as of right now, we will not be allowing spectators in the facility or on the fields. So that will result in a loss of approximately $14,000 for gate receipts. In addition to that, because we're not at this time allowing outside entities to use our facilities, we do anticipate that we'll be losing rental income as well. Theater receipts, again, also running COVID and not having people inside the building. So combine all of these costs here. And one more thing that's not included here as a potential loss is a reduction in parking fees that we will be able to collect at the high school. We're exploring that option because the students will be here on a limited basis. We're thinking of making certain concessions for FY21 and working with Lisa to discuss that. One plan that we have, or one idea that we have right now, is to charge on a semester basis and to reduce the parking fees by approximately 15%. That will result in a net loss in receipts of roughly $20,000+. We do have plans. There are different ideas that we have right now that will able to help us to mitigate some of these additional costs. As everyone know, there is a CARES Act funding, which is a part of the overall federal funding. The dollars that's here, the $51,548, is based on a Title I formula. Title I, when you consider Title I is primarily money that are allocated to low-income districts. And Weston, according to the state and to the federal government, is not a district with low incomes. And because of that, we do not historically receive a lot of money for federal funding related to Title I. as I mentioned before previously, we're definitely in discussion with the Board of Finance to establish the non-lapsing account that will give us an approximately $177,000. We have submitted for the third quarter expenses that we incurred for FY20 FEMA, and we do anticipate, we have not heard from FEMA's yet as to what of those costs or expenditure that we did submit will be allowed. If everything is allowed, we do anticipate to receive $70,000 from FEMA. Annually, we do receive a grant, so to speak, for accepting open choice students. We do plan this year, if those funds are received, to use that $80,000 to help to offset the expenditure related to reopening / COVID-19. Some good news related to the district, because we normally, in the past couple of years, we've been seeing reduced funding from the state of Connecticut. Last Friday on the 21st, we did receive preliminary numbers or indication as to what our funding would be under the governor's coronavirus relief. Currently, let me get that number, sorry. We do anticipate, based on the initial projection from the state, that the district will receive $350,751 that are restricted to definitely costs related to COVID-19, PPEs, any costs related to transportation, cleaning, for a total allotment of $350,000. We did not get an allocation to help us to mitigate any costs surrounding academics. Those funds are earmarked for district, as again, going back to Title I, district that have a Title I population of approximately 40%. For Western, to give you a sense as to what that is approximately 0.013% of our population is free and reduced, and that will lead us to Title I funding. So we do anticipate to need approximately $100,000 when you do factor in this new $105,000 when you do factor in this new source of funding that we have for FY21.
So where do you, the new source of funding, where do you see, which buckets is that going to hit?
So because there is restriction on this, Tony, the primary where that's going to head is going to be for cleaning costs. Primarily, the bulk of the money that's been allocated to us, approximately $306,000, had to do with cleaning and PPE. So the majority of the money is really $312,000 is really surrounding health and safety, cleaning and PPE, with a small percentage, with a small dollar amount allocated or specifically allocated transportation costs, additional transportation costs.
Are there any other grants that we're anticipating right now?
At this time, we do not. There's been talks that there's different funding sources out there. And as you mentioned initially with Tony, just with everything, even surrounding the reopening, the information from the state tends to change, and we just pretty much make the adjustments as we went along. We did not know about this. The announcement was made probably previously, but in terms of what the level of funding would be, we did not become aware of this until last Friday.
Bill, you're really breaking up again.
Where did I lose you guys?
Go back
Better?
to something about stuff coming out of Hartford around that area.
So information from Hartford, it really trickles in. Tony mentioned previously, even surrounding just our reopening plan, these were just information that trickles in and they change on a regular basis. This information regarding CRF, of the Coronavirus Relief Fund, only came to our attention last Friday. And when we got that information, we definitely passed this information on to the board and to just let everyone know that we do have this new source of funds to mitigate reopening.
So with respect to the $350,000 that we were notified of last week, how definitive is it that Hartford is actually going to pay that full amount? And I'm asking that because there are various grants. We're told one number, we get a portion of it, and then 3 months later, we're told you're not getting the rest of it. So how definitive
For right now, I'm not going to say how definitive, because I'm honestly not certain. I did reach out to a source that we have at State Liaison, and just to find out what the mechanisms are for us to get these funds. And the person pretty much mentioned to me at this time she wasn't even aware this was going out. She was not aware that this was going out. So the mechanisms are currently not in place, and we would have to official information. Right now, it's just out there. We do not know how to access it. The idea was that this was going to be a part of our ESSERS, so to speak, which is the Elementary and Secondary Emergency School Relief Fund. So the idea was that this would be in addition to that, if it was a part of that overall grant. But as of right now, or as of last Friday, we do not know.
Yeah, Gina, it's a good point, because when you look at the list of towns and the amounts that they got, and some of them, it's very hard to understand the basis in which they actually distributed those funds, or the basis in which they actually calculated how much each town would get.
But if we look at the entire list of potential mitigating funds, I would also say then the FEMA reimbursement is not definitive either, correct? The only definitive funds are the CARES Act of 51,000, the FY21 carryover funds of 177, and the open choice grant of 80. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Okay, so it's not 350 that's up in the air. It's more like 420.
But we do need the Board of Finance to approve the 177, Ruby.
Right.
They haven't
That's
actually-
right.
But the
Right.
grant money that we just heard about, and for which we were notified today or yesterday, whenever it was,
Friday.
why is that, what gives you the sense that that's tenuous, even if you got a notification on paper?
Until we can officially apply for this grant, I don't want to say that it's tenuous, but it may be solid, because when the amount came out for the CARES Act, that amount remained solid. There was no change in that amount. So if the CRF is going to follow the CARES Act or the ESSER, then I would say that yes, we would definitely will be getting the 350. But I just want to wait until we have official language that, hey, please apply for the grant, and the grant has been approved. Until we have a grant that's been approved.
It's an eligibility notification.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. There's an allocation, but then you have to apply for the allocation.
Yeah, I understand.
So the $350,000, do I take that from the 578 so that the request is only $220,000?
If it all comes through.
If it all comes through, is that what I should take it from?
From
But
the floor.
Hillary, what's the 500 you mentioned?
So when the 350, I should take it from the full special appropriation request of 578, so that request then comes down to around $220-something thousand, $228,000. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing the 528.
No, Hillary, you see how he has potential mitigating funds number 11, 12, 13, and 14? Okay, now add a number 15, and that is your new source of funding of 350,000. So in total, our total potential mitigating funds is 730,000. That's what we potentially have coming to help to offset the cost. The only thing that
Which means our projected deficit is down in the 1.5 range.
Under
One.
105
There's
change.
About 100,000.
105 change.
Yep.
Do I take
Well, I'm sorry. Like I always like to point it out, on the gross level, it's 1.54. If everything that we're discussing right now comes to fruition, then it is 0.84%.
Mhm.
So if I take that 730,000, I subtract it from the 950 though, right?
From 835.
35.
Where's 950?
From 957.
Where's 957? Sorry, I'm missing.
I'm sorry, Hillary, I'm having a difficult time following the numbers.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're taking it. Okay, you're taking it from the 865.
835.
35. What numbers are you looking at, Hillary?
I'm looking at. I might be looking at. I'm looking at the sheet. I don't know what.
Yeah, the sheet is entitled FY21 COVID-19 financial impact.
Yes.
And make sure, Hillary, that you're looking at the one that was attached in CABE, because there was a draft from finance that
Correct.
then got
Yeah,
adjusted, because I think you're referencing an old number, because we
Yeah, the old number had the addition of a kindergarten section that was removed, so the number is down now. So that's what you're looking at, because you probably were looking at the draft which had K 1 and 3.
Yes. That's
Yeah, so there's a new one that just has 1 and 3.
Okay. Thank you.
Bill, I had a question though. The 350 grant is limited to PPE and transportation. Is that right?
and cleaning.
Right, so pretty majority of it is PPE and cleaning.
Do we have $350,000 worth of, I mean, are we going to be able to get a credit for all of, are we going to be able to utilize the full 350? Will we get there?
Yeah, if you, yes, because we do anticipate a large cost for cleaning services. In addition to that, if we don't get to the 350, we probably will be a little bit short. But for the most part, I want to say yes, all combined. Once this becomes clearer, I'm going to have a discussion with the grant, with our grant manager or program manager, to see if there's any flexibility in using these funds allocated for other line items.
Yeah, remember, we only purchase PPE for a portion of the year.
That's what I was getting at. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
In the building of this submission, we built it from the document. You're seeing somewhat a cycle or two before, but we had to submit actual estimated figures, which Phil and I had pulled from a slightly earlier version of this document. So that's what they were looking at in determining what they would award. Tony,
even if you just add the expenses of number 1, number 5, and number 7, which fall under that category, you're there. You're at the 350.
Yeah, and that's what we had submitted. We submitted that. So you as a board are clear on that. We submitted these numbers based on a required submission with required categories, and this is what is there. We did receive, when you're ready, Tony, it might be time to do that after Phil's done. You did get fairly good news, some mixed news on the technology side, because right now, as the state sees it, you have money flowing this way to districts. Then you had help for technology, and Dan DeVito, when you're ready, can speak to that. Those updates went to the board today. They're not posted in the public record, but we can easily do that. So when you're ready, Tony, I think that'd be good to have that as part of this discussion for the board. And I know Dan's ready just to summarize.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean,
I just have one more question about this grant submission. With the PPE purchase, we approved like an initial purchase with the caveat that there may be additional purchases throughout the year. Did the grant include all proposed purchases, or was it restricted to what what the amount we had actually spent at this time?
The grant submission, this is for the 350, Gina, correct?
Correct.
So that survey, what did it assume for the full year?
So it used the full projected purchase, not the piece that we.
Correct. Correct.
Actually, Gina, I'm glad you brought up about the PPE. Just for record, all of the PPE that we purchased in the summer, I know purchase orders were written for it. Is it here physically on campus?
All PPEs that we did purchase are physically on site as of today. In terms of PPE and protective gear, so to speak. Yeah. The only thing that is missing, and I did get a word today that it will be shipped, are the desk screens that we have for the main offices, the security areas, and for the teachers. Our first shipment came in last week, and we'll be getting the largest shipment, if not, hopefully by later this week, and we will start to deploy them and have them installed beginning this week into next week.
Okay.
So in short, everything that we've ordered, we have them in district.
Great. Okay. And then my second question is, do you have a date in mind where we would need to order our next installment of PPE? And I'm asking this question because I just found out of a district in New Jersey that was forced into distance learning because they did not receive all of their PPE in time. And I don't want us to be caught in that situation.
Right. So the plan is, or you guys gave us instruction to purchase enough to last us pretty much for the first quarter. And so we did go out and we did purchase enough, as much as we can best guess. This is new for us, and we we don't truly have the data that will tell us, what it is that we will need. So we made a best guess, based on what we thought we would need. So we do have enough quantities of hand sanitizers, face shields, face masks, disinfectant wipe to get us through the first quarter. And we do have a source, assuming that there's no interruption with the supply chain. We do have a source that we definitely partner with Westport to get the best price that we could. That source is definitely willing and able to provide us, provided that there's no interruption, of course, with the supply chain, with all the PPEs that we do need.
Great. Okay. I just wanted to make sure those lines of communication were fluid as we start school, just in case they needed an order by a certain date. Thank you.
No, absolutely. So we've definitely gotten everything out, and we do plan to monitor them just so we can establish the data, because we don't have a base point. So we're going to establish that base point, and we'll go from there.
Perfect.
Bill, is there any way of going back? I mean, it's nice to have these grants to offset our expenses. Is there a vehicle for appealing, kind of saying, okay, 350 is not enough, we need a lot more than that for X, Y, and Z? I mean, is there an appeal process associated with these grants or not?
Well, because these are not competitive grants, Tony, there's no appeal process for grants that are not competitive. These are amounts that are pretty much established by the state, and pretty much the federal grants are just established by the federal. So it's based on the formula. The state gets a certain allotment of money. From then, the state then does another reallocation, and that is pretty much allocated. There is no source available for us to appeal any of our awards. It's pretty much what the state tells us that what we're going to receive, and that's pretty much a final number. If there is such a source, I'm not aware of what that source is as it relates to educational funding. As it relates to FEMA, which is pretty much brand new for us and for the town, well, for myself, it could be that if expenditures are rejected by FEMA, there's an appeal process for that, but that is to be determined, and I would definitely need to work with Rick Darling on that. But as of right now, we do not know what portion of our reimbursement requests will or will not be approved. But as it relates to educational grants, there's no appeal process.
So since you just said something, you said you were working with Rick Darling on the FEMA grants. Are the FEMA grants paid directly to the Board of Education, or do they go to the town where technically Board of Finance has to then allocate them for our use?
It's a joint submission, because the Board of Education cannot submit directly to FEMA. The Board of Education has to submit in collaboration or jointly with the town.
So again, do we have the technical answer that once the funds come in, they are definitely ours, or does the Board of Finance need to approve that allocation?
That's technical, and I would definitely have to get some additional information on that one. For right now, I am not 100% certain.
Because the old Connecticut grants we used to get, not the special ed grants, but the other ECS grant, that used to go to the town, and the Board of Finance had to approve that transfer to us on an annual basis.
Correct. I think this is different.
Okay.
And so I do believe, so yes, we had to submit a joint submission, but I do believe that if we're able to delineate what portion belongs to the town, or what was approved for the town, or what portion was approved for the Board of Finance, I do believe that we should be able to get those funds.
Thank you. Do we need to talk further about the possible adjustments to the parking fees?
Yeah, I had asked if necessary, Phil and Lisa to talk with the board about that, because typically in the budget process, that's something that you as a board focus on. And I know Phil and Lisa have been working in a very good focused way, and in the midst of everything else, to listen to family concerns about that. So I don't know, Phil, if you and Lisa want to speak to that a little more, but ask the board if that's something at this point you want to engage in or not. But it's obviously something you should hear about and at least have a sense of, given it is a part of our budget process every year.
Sure. Let's talk about parking fees.
Sure, I'm gonna have Lisa take the lead on this one.
Sure. So just to sort of recap, parking at the high school is, it was raised a couple of years ago to $200 a year, $100 a semester. Every senior is guaranteed a parking spot. We make sure that we have enough for our seniors, and then we let juniors, as they get their licenses, they can also park. We have 2 junior lots. Sometimes we have to have a lottery if we don't have enough, we have too many juniors, but in recent years, we've been very accommodating, and I have to thank my administrative colleagues that have given up some spots on either end, specifically Patty and Dan, to make it work. So what happens is that seniors generally pay $200 for the year, and then juniors pay by semester because they don't get their licenses. When we had our student meet the admins last week, and it had come up previously in a couple of emails by students, they said, you know, we didn't park last year for the full year. Can we have a refund from last year? The way the parking works is that we the target number is $45,000, which is approximately, I think if we do 250 spots, that brings in 50,000. And that's what the revenue is expected in the Board of Ed projected budget. So I told them, I'm sorry, there's no refunds for what happened during COVID the last few weeks of the school year. However, they are concerned in that we're only coming every other day. We're only spending half the day there. What's going to happen? Do we have to pay the $200 up front, et cetera, et cetera? And we're trying to be responsive, because the reality is we don't know particularly what's going to happen. And if we stay in the current model that we are beginning with, or if it changes. So in talking to Phil and trying to take into consideration the students, because there are fees associated with, as you're all very aware, there's class dues, there's parking fees, there's athletic fees, that we thought that perhaps beginning the year for the first semester of, this is one of the things we're thinking about, reducing the parking fees to half. So that would be $100 a semester. Primarily that would be most of the seniors that would park, because they have, they have their licenses, where the juniors do not. But it was raised.
Half. So I thought it was $100 a semester.
Oh, I'm sorry, 50.
Okay, thank you.
It's late. My math is not good, Hillary. So they would pay $50 a semester. And what we would do is it's really important that they register, regardless of anything with fees and everything. We have to have them register, because then we are provided with some very specific information. First, do they have a license? What kind of a license do they have? If they can, there are certain driving laws. They can't drive people around except people in their own family, et cetera. Their insurance information, their car information, all of that is also for their safety, so that we understand who is parking on campus. We also have to be very cognizant that, we don't have extensive surveillance, if you will, in the parking lots all of the time. Yes, we have cameras, but aren't people out there patrolling the parking lot? So our way of thinking is that, $50 a semester seems reasonable. It's not 100. And by doing it by semester for both grades, then, if we have to pivot at some point, I guess that's the new buzzword now that we use, that we have to seamlessly pivot. we can certainly do that and, you know, I'll work through it. So,
Yeah, Lisa, is that, I mean, I'm all for doing something that's fair. I do agree that whatever you do, everyone has to register. And I think we should, you know, do something, if the board agrees, I think we should do something that's just fair, right?
well, that's, you know, we're not gonna, like, I think it was, I don't know who said it this evening, that we're not gonna please everyone. But I think that we have to be responsive, we have to listen to concerns, and that if we can, you know, be fair here as we move forward, then we very well should be. And especially, you know, I'm all about students bringing forth in a respectful way their concerns. And if we can do that, I think that that would go a long way because they, you know, they're doing so in a very respectful, civil way and a very thoughtful way.
Yeah. I personally don't think something like this is while we discuss it as a board, I don't think this is necessarily a board decision, but it's.
We should probably actually vote to amend the fee because we are the people who actually set the fee to begin with.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I'm fine to vote. I mean,
Do you want a motion?
yeah, let's have a motion. If everyone, I mean, let's have some, I mean, does anyone think that we should actually not reduce the fee or even raise the fee? No, I don't think so. Okay.
Gina,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, just to mention in your resolution that this is only for FY21 and that
Correct.
we consider for 22.
Correct.
So can we have a motion?
All right, I'm going to wing it.
Okay.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the reduction of FY21 only high school parking fees to be $50 per semester.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ruby. All in favor?
Gina, aye.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Ruby.
Hi, Taffy.
Hi, Hillary.
Hi. Hi, Victor.
Thank you very much. And
Hi,
I will
Tony.
say that this has been voted on. This is solid news and information for those of us that are watching, if you do wish to share, because I know there's many.
Wait, one more second, Lisa.
Oh, sorry.
All opposed?
Oh,
No? Okay. Motion
okay.
passes. Now you can do it. Now.
Okay, so please feel free to share the information. You will
Great.
have a lot of happy seniors and juniors.
Well,
Thank
it's
you.
nice to make somebody happy this evening.
Exactly. Thank you.
All right. Where do we go from here?
Well, Tony, I don't know if the board, I mean, Dan DeVito can very quickly summarize for you.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because it does fit in this category. And I can tell you in other districts, as superintendents talk about resources coming in from the state, there's the financial pieces you've talked about, and then there's the technology pieces. So I know Dan can do this pretty quickly for you. And you may have questions about this as well. Can't hear you, Dan. Still can't hear you.
All right, how about now? Can you hear me? Okay. So part of the state grants is the Everybody Learns initiative, which the state polled every school district, trying to find out how many extra Chromebooks we need to help support the school year, as well as mobile hotspots to provide internet access for families who do not have internet access at home. We requested 600 Chromebooks, and this was meant to help offset Chromebooks at the high school to help offset the BYOD program. We requested 600. The state awarded us 37 Chromebooks. And for the wireless hotspots, we requested 92. And I'll get the exact number right here. They gave us a total of 64 wireless hotspots. So I'm waiting on confirmation, shipping confirmation for everything. And once we get the 37 Chromebooks and the 60 some odd hotspots, we will determine the families who need the hotspots and where we're going to deploy the 37 Chromebooks.
So what are the implications of that, Dan? I mean, that's, 570 short.
Yeah.
And
So right now we are in the process of repurposing every single Chromebook that we were looking to decommission because of their age. And so now we are recommissioning them and using them on a case-by-case basis for students K-8 and at the high school who do not have their own device to provide it for them. So we're trying to get all of these Chromebooks up in workable condition as best as we possibly can.
Dan, question about just what are the, where do you see the needs for in the town for families that do not have access to appropriate technology for their children? I know this is, this is a big issue in more of the larger cities, but what kinds of needs do we have in this town and how are we addressing that?
So from a pre-K through 8 perspective, we have reorganized our technology and we will be providing a device for every child pre-K through 8. And at the high school, we'll be leveraging the bring your own device. In terms of having internet access at home, we're going to have to take that on a case-by-case basis to provide any one of the hotspots that we have for families who don't have internet access. Now, Weston is a little bit difficult into how we provide internet access. The state had said they'll provide cable modems or wireless hotspots. We chose to go with hotspots because those are those are COPPA filtered, meaning that the internet that we will provide for the families, it automatically has filtering that's COPPA compliant. So we're going to have to, I've been already working with the principals on, do you have any family members that you are aware of in your buildings who do not have internet access? And we'll be contacting those families when the hotspots come in to provide these for them. But
Now,
that's why we've been reorganizing as much of our technology as quickly as we can, because we know that in the spring, there were families that they may have had one Chromebook, but they may have 2 kids in the family. So now they're sharing devices. We're trying to remove that as best as possible to give every student a device.
Now, how are the, is there a vehicle for families to reach out, or is this something where, I mean, you mentioned the principals or what's the process for that?
So we just were notified today about this. So I didn't want to send anything out until I got confirmation from the state. So I will be discussing this with the leadership team, and we're going to put out some kind of a survey or some kind of notification for families to let us know if they need internet access at home.
Okay.
So Dan, this is a little bit of a technical question.
Mm-hmm.
It's been explained to us in the past that Chromebooks, like, they have a useful life that in some way can kind of be controlled by Google, whether or not they allow the device to continue functioning.
Correct.
So, and we had a replenishment schedule based on the best estimate of what Google was going to let go.
Right.
So how many of our devices that we are now being forced into repurposing because they're essentially at the end of what their estimated life is, how many of those are we actually going to be using?
So Google extended the life for another 365 days for the majority of our devices that we are repurposing. So we have different tiers based on when we purchased the Chromebooks. So our oldest Chromebooks that we currently will be using this year, they will be reaching what's called end of life in 2021. So next June is when the end of life is for them. So they were originally supposed to expire in June of 2020, but they extended it for a year due to extraneous circumstances. And at the same time, Google said, yeah, don't ever look for us to do this again for you. So this is a kind of a one-time deal. And part of it is because of the major shortage of Chromebooks worldwide right now, that there are so many districts across the world who are looking for Chromebooks and they simply cannot get them. So Google did a common courtesy for this. So right now, none of the Chromebooks that we will be providing for students are at what they call their end of life, or EOL.
All right, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Dan, this came up in today's WIS Meet the Admin Q&A. So if a child has their own Chromebook, is there a possibility for them to take advantage of the bring your own device like you do in the upper schools, therefore kind of having an extra Chromebook to give to someone that's truly in need of it?
Yes, I did speak to Nicole about this. She sent me a text during the meeting about this.
Right.
We do allow, we can allow students, if they have a personal device, a personal Chromebook, to use it in our district, provided that they are logging onto their Chromebook with their district Google account.
Okay. And so will the child then just need to bring it at the start of the year to configure it with any software, anything that needs to happen to their own personal device?
That's the good thing about Chromebooks, is that nothing ever actually gets installed on Chromebooks. So Chromebooks are all cloud-based on and then Google has something called an administrator panel, an admin panel. And we push out, so on Chromebooks, it's not software, it's called extensions. So whenever you log on to a Chromebook, based on your login are certain extensions that we provision that automatically get downloaded onto that Chromebook.
Right.
So that's why I was stressing that as long as the student is logging into their personal Chromebook with their district account, they'll receive all of the extensions like Seesaw or Canvas or Screencastify or Pear Deck or whatever we're putting on there. It'll automatically come down when they log into their personal Chromebook. So the only thing that has to happen when they come here is they have to connect their device to our public wireless network, which we can easily provide instructions. We've had a public wireless network for a few years here in Weston. That's all they have to do is connect to it, log in, and they get everything they need.
Okay, and then I'm just thinking ahead. If a child then forgets their home device, and if they've already said at the beginning of the year, I'm using my home device, we will not be providing an extra one for them to use that day at school then, correct?
So here's the problem with that. So most school districts, and Weston included, had a shared model for devices. Chromebooks were in carts or iPads were in carts. They were wheeled into classrooms and they were shared. That's not something we want to do this year for health and safety reasons. So we're working on creating some kind of like a loaner program for students who forget their Chromebooks, or if they forget to charge their Chromebooks the night before. But we have to work the kinks out because we can't have them in and out of service.
Right.
You know, so it's like if they need a Chromebook, they'll take a Chromebook, but then when they return it, we have to let it sit for X number of days. Then we have to determine who cleans it, who disinfects it. So that's a major talking point that I've been speaking to other local tech directors, and we all are kind of trying to figure out what's the best plan of attack for this.
Okay.
So are our lower schools going to be students going to be taking their devices to and from home each day, just so if we have the odd at 4 o'clock, we have to shut the district down kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. So pre-K through 8, and then any students at the high school who do not have a bring your own device, we will be asking them to bring their devices home every day and into school every day in case we have to make a change to the school structure on a dime. They'll have it at home already.
Okay, so sorry, just to reiterate, then on the first day of school, any child who wants to use their own personal device, they should be bringing it to school from day one.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, this is just new for lower school, so I just want to make sure everything's very clear.
No, absolutely. And this is a big change for everybody included. I mean, it was really just the middle school that was one-to-one. And, you know, so this is a massive change for the entire district. So I understand everyone's questions and apprehensions with this. So the more questions I can answer and the more I can put everyone's mind at ease, you know, ask away.
Okay.
Came up on the middle school call, which was the kids that are the gold cohort that won't be there on Monday, but they're going to have live instruction online on Monday afternoon. Is there a way for them to get their Chromebooks in advance?
Well, see, that's another great question. We're trying to figure that out. And now that we know we're not getting those 600 Chromebooks, we are trying to do as much as we can, as quickly as we can, to get the Chromebooks that we have provisioned and ready and squared away. You know, they have to be entered and assigned to every student. So as of right now, I'm not comfortable saying that we can do something beforehand. I'm going to need a few days before I can make any kind of a comment. But right now, I think the best thing I can say is we'll only be able to provide Chromebooks on the first day of school. And so with the gold cohort, they may not be able to get a device until the second day of school, because I just think with the timing of everything, we will not be able to have all of the Chromebooks ready, let's say the Friday the 4th beforehand.
Hillary, I mean, it's a really good question. It's something leadership team talked about last week a lot. And in general, I've urged people that yes, in Weston, we're rigorous and we want to hit the ground running in a sprint, but we're phasing in so many ways. And so the thought was, and Dan may be rethinking this, we'll talk about it in leadership team tomorrow some more, but phasing in is the way we have to think about things. Some of you have talked about patience. So, you know, day one, day two, we're still getting used to each other. We're getting the devices handed out, because part of why we want to hand them out in person is we can make sure students know all the rules and the processes regarding their devices, on how to handle them, work with them, and all the rest. But again, we thought about doing it ahead of time. We didn't see any way to do that. And one big reason is, how do you do it in a healthy way? How do you do it in a way that people hold the social distancing and all the sort of new rules of how we engage? So I don't think we're going to shift on this, despite Dan's good creative thinking, but it's phasing it in once students are in person in front of us for their regular day.
Right. And I think, and Bill just touched on that, is, you know, like, for instance, part of the middle school's process of handing out devices is there's a presentation that they're given on digital citizenship, what they can and cannot do with their Chromebooks, how to take care of their Chromebooks, how they have to charge them every night and bring them in fully charged. So we want to make sure that all students are given that type of a presentation before they take home their device.
That was half of my question, actually, Dan. So thanks for clarifying that.
Sure.
The other half relates to, I just want to make sure that the voluntary distance learning kids have those families been communicated with in terms of how they're getting their Chromebooks, since they won't be in person? And then related to that question, tech support, particularly with respect to the voluntary distance learning kids, but I mean, also everybody. Because if you're having a live streaming situation, and also in the middle school and the high school, the interactive component of that, how real time and how responsive are we going to be able to be with, you know, technological problems that may arise?
Good question. And I think that's one that we're always going to try to wrestle with. It honestly depends. So this was our first foray, I think, any education IT department's foray into working on personal equipment or at people's houses this past spring. And there's a lot of factors that can cause issues when someone's at home. If it's a device, if it's a district-owned device, we have remote access tools. So we can remote into Chromebooks or laptops to fix it. But if it's their internet service that's a problem, or if it's their wireless that's a problem, we can't fix that at somebody's house. That's a liability issue for us. So the first thing we have to figure out is, what's the problem, and then can we fix it? In terms of tech support, you know, we have our help desk. We have a help desk number that staff and students and families can call in the event of an issue. But the department, there's only one technician per building. So depending on what time of day, what time of year, It may not necessarily be immediate simply because it's one person supporting not only one building anymore, but potentially one building and several hundred people at home. So we're trying to figure out the best course of action to streamline this process as best as we can to support everybody.
And as that evolves, will that be the best place for families to look for that type of information? Would that be on the COVID-19 website?
Yes, and so what we're also doing is I'm in the process of creating some helpful how-to PDFs that's going to go under the technology portion of our COVID-19 website, just for some simple answers like, as a student or as a parent, how do I connect to Seesaw? How do I connect to Google Classroom? How do I sign up for the weekly Parent Digest in Google Classroom? How do I connect to Canvas? How do I join a Pear Deck presentation? So we're going to put some quick how-to videos or documents on that portion. So I'm in the process of building it right now. And once it's built is when I'm going to go live with it. We will send out a notification to all families in Weston, point them to that direction with some, quick help. I know every building, the media specialists have actually already created distance learning help sites that have been available since the spring. So we'll be showing families how to get to those websites also. So we're going to try to pre-communicate as much, I guess I'm going to make a new term here, pre-troubleshooting information as we can before a family has to potentially email or call the help desk.
No, that's really helpful.
No problem.
And the voluntary distance learning kids, their families have been, or they know how to get their Chromebooks, or they will know?
We will be notifying them in the next few days on how to and when to pick them up. So obviously that's a little bit of a different animal than the hybrid students because it's a smaller group of students. So we are working on a way to potentially try to do a safe pickup the Friday before. We just have to work out, the kinks because like I said, that's a lot smaller student population in every building than the hybrid off-day students, than the gold cohort. So more information to follow.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Dan? Let's move to the next agenda item, which involves discussion and possible vote on establishing a non-lapsing account. I think we discussed it before. The technical details of establishing this really is a responsibility right now of the Board of Finance, but I guess we need to vote on potentially going to the Board of Finance and asking for a non-lapsing account on the 177,000 and change of additional savings above the 600,000. I don't think we have a motion on that.
We
Yes.
do.
Yeah.
Tony, I have a quick question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I may, Ruby, quickly, the
Sure.
motion is written, and Phil asked for this, that it's not specific to COVID-19 nor specific to any sum of money, but to the general concept of a non-lapsing account. But you do have
Sure.
So Phil, quick question. If we get all of the potential mitigating funds, that will be approximately $730,000. Our current unanticipated expenditures is 835,000. So you're saying that then the balance would only be about 105,000. Would we, if we get this full 177 of the carryover funds, if we get that from Board of Finance, will we have to give back anything? Because then technically our over expenditure will just be to the tune of $105,000.
Oh, so Ruby, the way.
No, never mind. I answered my own question. I'm sorry. That's built into it. Never mind. Sorry.
I'm always happy to help, Ruby.
Okay.
Sorry. As I talked myself through it, I'm like, duh.
Okay. I got it. So can we have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education recommend to the Weston Board of Selectmen and Weston Board of Finance the establishment of a non-lapsing account.
Second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. That was Hillary. All in favor?
Hi, Taffy.
Hi, Ruby.
I'm Melissa.
Hi, Gina.
Aye, Tony. All
Hi,
opposed?
Victor.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Let's move to the weekly enrollment update. Bill?
Thank you, Tony and board. I can move this one pretty quickly. It's here really to set up the conversation on the next one, the first grade section, and Ken and Laura will lead you through that. The enrollment continues to be very, very good news. I'm just reporting to you on the materials I sent to you late Friday afternoon. It's now in the public record for everybody. But again, enrollment is up. We're up 2.58%, 2.6%. Across the board. That's an additional 58 students ahead of last year. And from the previous report, another 13 students have come in. As I reported in a lot of detail in the first update to you, a little less detail in this one. The growth is across the grades, across K through really 5 or 6. And you're seeing cohort growth, meaning not just grade to grade, but as a lot of new families and students are coming in, well over 70. And if you kind of figure out how that number adds up, you just have to look at the chart from a cohort standpoint, meaning grade 1 last year, now grade 2 this year, and see the growth. We are stretching at certain grades, so that's why we have before you the recommendation on grade 1. You had voted previously on grade 3. That was earlier in the summer. We have backed down on the recommendation for kindergarten. We think that will level off, but Laura can speak a bit more to that, and Ken. We always monitor that closely. But overall, this is great news for Weston. In the spring, as we were concerned about COVID-19, there were some voices in town saying there may be good news here. This may become a place that families want to relocate to. And as I said to the staff Friday, despite understandably, we have staff that's very nervous, very worried. And I had 230 on a Zoom Friday. I said, please take this giant compliment. People all over this region are moving to Weston because they see this as a safe place and a high quality educational place for their children. And that is due to all of you, our staff, our teachers. That's the attraction. Yes, it's a beautiful town and beautiful homes, but you can see with the enrollment, a lot of people are wanting to be here, and the enrollment growth continues. So this is very, very good news. Every year I tell you how we're doing relative to Malone and McBroom's projections. They are off this year. They did not plan COVID-19 impact into their projections, which were done in the fall. So I would urge us to cut them some slack, because typically they're in a 0.5 differential, which if anyone studied demographics and enrollment projections, that is almost close to a perfect match. They are off this year by about a 2.8% differential, which almost tracks exactly to this enrollment growth that we'd love to have, but we did not necessarily anticipate it. I also sent to you Friday in the packet, we'll post it so it's in the public record, our voluntary distance learning opt-in numbers. Dan can update me, because while we had closed that down, we have been flexible. Families have reached out to us, a very small number, but we're listening and adding them in, because this is a program where you have to give families that right to choose in. As of Friday, we were at 311 students who had opted in. Overall, district-wide, that's 13.6%. And it does vary by level, as the document shows. Again, we'll post that so it's in the public record. The high school has nearly 8%, 7.7% students opting in, 64. The middle school is at 80 students, or 14%. Our elementaries are more. WIS is at nearly 20% opting in for the voluntary distance learning. That's 100 students. And Hurlbut is at 67 students, a little over 16% opting in. And that does track roughly with our area districts. Overall in the area, they're somewhere in the 90%. So we're a little higher than that. and that's district-wide, so I don't have the school-by-school comparisons for you. But we are working very, very hard to make this a very full and robust program for the families that have selected voluntary distance learning. I do need to repeat, for all our hard work on this, it is one of the most challenging things that the state designed for us. And I have advised you that when this first came clear to us as superintendents across the state, and they only made the requirements clear to us on July 23rd, a lot of us said, we will do this, we'll make it work, but it will be a challenge to make sure we're providing the high quality education for students in this important choice program. But we will do it, and we're working hard to deliver on it. So that's the enrollment update. There might be some questions, but you'll continue as a board to get these every Friday. And if they start to sort of not give you new news, we may jump some of that to that October 1 deadline the state still is holding us to for our full enrollment count for a given year.
Laura and Patty, as from this point on into the fall, what's the normal? This isn't normal, but what do you anticipate in terms of enrollment updates? Like, what usually happens at this point? This is getting towards the start of the school year. As you start into the school year, what do you typically see?
We do usually enroll students almost up until the opening of school. It does taper off as we get closer to the opening.
Mm-hmm.
Families do like to move in before school actually opens, but we do pick up students throughout the year. I would have to pull the historical data for you just to let you know how we trend on average, but we do enroll students throughout the year at all the grade levels.
Yep.
Like fewer students move out, but we tend to pick up more students as they come in. At Hurlbut anyway.
And the same thing at WIS. It's really slowed down, but we did pick up another couple of students today. We got another email. So we are still picking up some students and it probably will continue until we start school. So we're starting a little later than usual, but I would think we'll probably pick up a few more students.
Right.
Tony, if I may add one thing that's very obvious to the board, but I just really want to stress it, that we staff up for that entire classroom, and that count includes whether that student is in person or with us through voluntary distance learning. And teachers, and this is going to be a challenge for our teachers, and it's part of the anxiety our teachers have, is that classroom teacher is responsible for those in the hybrid program and those in the voluntary distance learning program. So the class size, as this district's been committed to, still matters greatly because that teacher is responsible for that same number of students, not just half in front of them on any given day, but that full number. And the board should ask Laura, Patty, Ken about that, Dan, Lisa, because that's a very vital fundamental here for how we really are going to support quality teaching and learning.
Well, I just wanted to give whomever between Ken, the principals, a chance to talk about the challenges that the teachers are going to face, even though they may only have half the kids sitting in front of them and half the kids at home, like the challenges of teaching in this environment as an even greater support for why we want to make sure to continue with our existing guidelines.
Ken, unless you wanted to say something district-wide, do you want?
No, I just overall, I think, relationships are so important at the start of the year and building those and having students feel comfortable as they come in. We've had 5 months since students have been in the building. We have students who are new to school altogether in kindergarten, pre-K as well. And so, we're going to be seeing them every other day. So we do know that is critical for us, is to, in a shorter period of time, place more emphasis on those relationships and getting students comfortable and into routines. And that becomes more challenging, obviously, in a hybrid scenario.
I can add to that. That was actually something I talked about in the Hurlbut meeting today, was building those relationships and those bonds with our students and our families, particularly at the youngest levels. The relationship and the communication between the teacher and the family is critical. In addition to the students working in front of them, they need to constantly be in communication and be responsive to the needs of the families. Also at the early years, we're teaching students how to be in school, how to learn, and certainly this is going to be a little bit of a unique year even in terms of that. Our teachers are so dedicated and our staff is so devoted to making it a really engaging and fun learning environment. The interactions will look different this year, but I know our teachers are being very creative in making sure that the children are engaged and interacting with each other, albeit in socially distanced ways. Particularly at the elementary level, the foundational skills are critical at this age. Teaching students how to read, numeracy skills, and laying the foundations that will help support them as they continue their education through Weston. And a lot of that is very individualized. Our students are taught at their individual reading levels. We differentiate to a very high level to meet the needs of a wide variety of learners.
So Laura, the fact that 28 first graders are going to be voluntary distance learners, can you comment on whether that makes it any easier? In some ways, I think it makes it harder, but segueing, I know we're not going to jump ahead in the agenda, Tony, but I know we are talking about an additional first grade section. But we do have 28 children in first grade doing voluntary distance learning for now. We also have the info snap, which does not mean confirmed folks, but it's pretty likely, as you noted in the memo, that they will get all their documents in and they will be attending. Can you just comment on those sort of three variables? And maybe I'm jumping the gun on the agenda, Tony, but just comment on whether we are pushing the guidelines, and I'll leave it there.
Well, Tony, I might suggest there's no vote on the weekly enrollments. You might move the agenda now into the next topic. Again, we had brought you the enrollment update to set up the discussion you're now into. So I think they blend together. So you just feel free to go there if you need to.
Yeah, no, I think it's, I think they're tied. So I think we should actually discuss that, because that's really what this is the setup to.
Right. I'm sitting here trying to say, well, that you don't have 28 kids in front of you in the classroom, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's easier on the teachers, or that you can dedicate individualized time for those children any more easily. In fact, it may be more difficult. So I wanted you to comment on that, Laura.
Sure. So you are spot on. We do have 28 first graders at this time choosing voluntary distance learning. And those students are included in the 7 sections of first grade. So while they may not be physically in the classroom with the teacher, they are very much a part of the classroom community. They're involved in the morning meeting daily. They are going to be live streaming in on their cohort day. They will have dedicated time to work with that teacher. They are very much a part of the classroom community, and the teachers will treat them as such. I know there has been a lot of conversation around dedicated teachers to voluntary distance learning. Clearly a class of 28, you cannot have 28 first graders in a virtual environment. That's not conducive to learning, and it's not beneficial to anybody. That would take 2 teachers to accomplish that, which would be classes of 14, which would be wonderful. But now you're looking at the rest of the cohort being split across the 5 classes that will be at 22, 23 per class, and coming in person, even split in half is still too many. The other piece to remember with the voluntary distance learning, I spoke to several families again today. There's a lot of angst with families about the decision they're making. They want to make the right decision. They're thinking it through. They're thinking it through again. They talk through it with me. It is a fluid number. That 28 could go up. It could go down. We are asking families across the district to commit for September so we can get everybody up and running. And there are families that are already thinking ahead of maybe opting into voluntary distance learning, or then they're comfortable and they want to come back into school. Mm-hmm. So we need to be able to plan for all of those possibilities and to make sure that we have balanced classes that meet all of our children's needs
Laura-
even with that fluidity.
Laura, are you confident that we're going to be above the guidelines for the first grade?
Well, today we are. I know we submit weekly enrollment updates, but this is something the registrar, Lori Nagel, and I talk about on a daily basis, multiple times a day. So today we are at 142 first graders. We did have
142?
142. We did have two unexpected withdrawals.
Mm.
And so it's a fluid number. Tomorrow, we could get 2 more enrollments.
That's at 20, so that brings us at 20.3 as the average class size at 142.
20 and 21 a class, yes.
Yep.
You could go down to 140 and still be within guidelines, but 141 puts you over guideline.
Correct. 141 is guidelines. That would be 20 per class, which is guidelines for first grade.
You know,
and I do appreciate the question about the voluntary distance learning students. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. They're so much a part of our school and our community. And we are going to do everything to make them feel that way. And the teachers, although they may not be physically in the classroom, they're going to do everything they can to make them feel like they're in the classroom. The technology will be a great resource for that. And of course, the enthusiasm and creativity of our teachers.
So, you know, one of the things that, you know, I think that we are, there was a lot of talk last year about the fact that this reentry or reopening of schools was going to be multiple millions of dollars. And it's turning out that the numbers we're seeing now are significantly less. And so there's a tendency now to say, okay, we will approve some of the things that we typically would have a much more difficult conversation around, simply because of the fact that we're not seeing those kinds of numbers that somehow we were worried about last year. And so I think that what we need to do is also, you know, maintain, you know, regardless of what the COVID related expenses are, whether they're a lot or less than we had anticipated, we need to still maintain that same fiscal discipline around how we actually go about approving additional hires. And so my question is, and you know, this is maybe to Phil, this is to Laura, is if we approve this hire, then potentially what could we actually do with that, right? Where could we find the money? Now, we don't have to answer that question today, but that question will come up. And I'm concerned that because of the fact that our COVID related expenses may be significantly less than we thought they might be, that we're not going to be asking those same probing questions that we typically do. But I think we need to maintain that financial discipline, and we need ultimately to say, okay, you know, if the administration, I wouldn't second guess the administration. If we need that extra staff, then we need it, but ultimately we're going to have to find the money somewhere. And so we, you know, I think that's not a discussion necessarily for tonight, but I think that's a discussion that's going to be had over the course of the next couple of months, because we're going to basically have to understand how we're going to mitigate whatever deficit spending we do at this point in the year.
Tony, I think that, you know, the Weston Board of Education has had a long-standing tradition of doing its, excuse my language here, its damnedest to cover overruns.
Yep, I agree.
We've had some significant challenges in the past couple of years that have made that unattainable to 100%, but we did cover significant portions of those overages by doing internal work to mitigate that. And I think that the one thing we can do is stick to our core beliefs of the educational guidelines that we have in place to optimize the education, in particular of our younger students. And then Phil will work his magic, and we will, my favorite word again, collaborate across this district to do our best to cover it.
Yeah, Gina, I agree with you. I just wanted to make sure that we had this discussion because the fact it will be coming up, if not next month, the month after and the month after that, especially before we go to the Board of Finance with any request for a special appropriation. But I am absolutely sure Phil will do will perform his magic as he always does.
Absolutely.
He'll continue to do.
As I did say to the Board of Finance, we are committed to ensure that the Board of Finance is going to be as a last resort.
Mhm.
Prior to me coming here, and we did the same thing last year, is that we did realize at an early stage that we would need to establish a budget freeze, which we did prior to COVID-19, and we would definitely try to do that going into for this year as well. So we're committed, and we know that we do have that fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers, and we'll definitely do our utmost to ensure that the Board of Finance is really as a last resort.
Mhm.
And again, the establishment of a non-lapsing account helps. It really does, because it can be for those unknown and for those years when you do have those unknown or unexpected expenditures. But even without the non-lapsing account, we would definitely do our best to ensure that we cover as much, if not all, of those unanticipated expenditures.
Mhm. Have we ever had a situation where we approved the addition of a section, but it turned out that we started the year where we would have been below the class guidelines, even if we didn't add a section? Have we ever been in that situation?
At Hurlbut, not since I've been here.
Okay.
It wasn't a year that we added a section. There was one year where it was a funky number where technically we ended up being below guidelines
Mhm.
by like a portion of a student.
Right.
1 year, but that was based on what was budgeted,
Right.
not an addition.
Mhm.
I just want to say for the record, I am the most worried about Hurlbut students, only because they are the youngest. And this is so foreign to them. And I just think from a support perspective, you have a teacher, while you have a teacher on any given day worrying about 3 different types of students, right? The students that are before him or her sitting in their class, students that are at home on their off day doing asynchronous learning, and then students that are streaming into the class for distance learning. And I just think that's a lot of pressure on a teacher to be thinking about accommodating, supporting, helping, whatever, those 3 different types of students. And in this particular situation, the more support we can give to that particular grade, even that they're on the cusp, I support. I think the little ones need it for sure.
Any other comments from the board members?
I'm in full support of it, adding a section. I agree with Ruby. I heard you, Laura, loud and clear.
Okay. With that, let's have a motion.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the addition of 1 first grade section based on current enrollment.
Second?
Second.
Thanks, Taffy. All in favor?
Hi, Ruby.
Hi, Taffy.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Hillary.
Hi, Victor.
Hi, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Bill, next item is the update on the fall 2020 reopening.
Yeah, and I know, thanks, not you, sorry, thanks. Mark's got to jump off. Mark, do you have time to start? Because I know you had a previous 8 o'clock meeting and I know athletics matters. Maybe you just queue up a few things and then we can fill in if there are questions from the board. But I know, Mark, you've got a hard stop in a matter of minutes and then I'll pick it back up after Mark.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. I apologize for having to jump off. We have our SWC soccer coaches meeting this evening that I'm running, and since I set up the Zoom, they can't get in until I get there. So I do have to get there for 8 o'clock. But as far as athletics goes, in the ever-changing world of everything we live today, for all of us, it's not just athletics, but it is changing on a daily basis. Where we are right now is football is starting on Saturday. Most other sports are starting on Monday. The first week of the season, which is that all of next week, including this coming Saturday, is limited to cohorts of 10, no more than 60 minutes of training, 30 minutes of conditioning, 30 minutes of skill work, sport-specific skill work in cohorts of 10. And that would take us through the first week. The second week stays in the cohorts of 10. We don't get out of cohorts of 10 really now till the end of September almost. Games are going to, if they haven't even decided on playing competitions yet, but if they're going to be played, we're looking at the beginning of October, not the end of September now where they originally were scheduled. So again, taking things very slowly. I keep using the hybrid term, this, same as the school is starting, and that's really what athletics is in. Trying to give our athletes some sort of experience, get them out of their houses, get them physically active. We have our first captain circle tomorrow, our leadership circle with our captains, which will be interesting because I know that I'm going to get bombarded with a lot of the same questions about what do we do if, what do we do when? And so we'll do our best to get those student leaders ready to have success in their roles throughout the school year, whatever it may throw at us. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Just quickly, Mark, the DPH letter to CIAC indicated concerns about girls volleyball even happening inside and that it should possibly be outside, and also about modifications actually to football, making it a 7v7 program with no tackling. When do we expect CIAC and DPH to kind of come to some sort of agreement around those two sports? Those two sports seem to be more in question than any other fall program.
That is accurate. CIAC sent out new guidelines for volleyball last night. So as I said, things change on a minute-by-minute basis. And they recommended that as much as possible during this first week, you spend time outside. So, and in talks with our coach, we're going to be doing as much of the conditioning as we can outside and the volleyball play. And in an air-conditioned gym with good circulation and ventilation, that's a pretty good place to be if it's going to be like it was, earlier today and 90 degrees and sunny and windy and then rainy. But we will, we're going to take our lead from DPH and from CIAC and do what they're telling us is the smartest thing to do. One of the arguments about that is that DPH approved club volleyball to play inside all summer, and they've done that without incident and without a spike or a rise in any issues with COVID. So that's the back and forth that we're kind of caught in between right now. I know CIAC and DPH are meeting again. I think it's supposed to be Thursday. I actually have a meeting. I have the two heads of CIAC coming to our conference AD meeting Thursday as well. So between Thursday and Friday, we should get some hopefully fresh information.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Mark, I have a question whether maybe if you'd be willing to consider some sort of communication to the new families. I'm putting in my Weston branding hat here. I think it'd be nice for new families to get a sense of what the gamut of athletic programs are available to their kids coming in new to the town. I don't know if anything like that would be possible, because I do think, we relay the people that are moving in, we tell them what our kids are doing and how great the coaches are, but it'd be great if I don't know if that's possible, but I just bring it up for your consideration.
Yeah, it's very, I sent out an email blast to all registered athletes from the athletic department earlier in the week. And we've sent out email blasts directly to members of certain programs from their coaches. All I would need is the names and how to contact those new families. And I can certainly share that information with them or share our overall athletic program opportunities with them. Absolutely. That's easy.
Lisa has a comment.
I just wanted to add that no worries. We can get you that information, Mark, because this week we are having to meet the admins with new families to the district.
That is true too.
We can blast all that out and reference it. Thanks, Victor, for the suggestion.
Mark, when do you think, we will have this, the goalpost moves every day, but when do you think that we'll be able to understand what the fall is going to look like?
Well, I think what the fall is spelled out to be is conditioning and skill work, basically until the last week of September, and in cohorts, and then in the last week of September we'll be able to get in full teams if we're still moving forward at that point.
Right.
And then after that, our schedules are completed. We just have to be told, yes, you're going to be playing games, and then we can post the schedules. CIC has asked us not to post any schedules at this point. That's why they're not up on our website. Mm-hmm. So I would say, Tony, really it's going to be what you see right now is what we're expecting moving forward. And then as we get to the second week of September, I think then a final decision will be made on what's going to happen in October.
Okay.
And that's going to depend on what happens when schools open up. It really is, we're basing the athletic decision on, are we able to start our school safely and Connecticut's still in good shape a week or 2 weeks into schools being open around the state.
Now, just to clarify, that's all fall sports.
That is all fall sports that we're talking about. There's no definitive answer on any fall sport as of this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. The only, the one thing I wanted to, I guess we don't have to, you don't need to have a conversation now, but if the time comes where the decision around fall sports is inconsistent with the way that we're actually proposing, the way in which we're actually configuring, our students actually going back into the class, then we probably as a board need to have a conversation around that. I hope that doesn't happen. And it sounds like now that decision is going to be pushed off a bit. But probably, once a decision comes down, if it's somewhat inconsistent with the way that we're actually looking at things from a medical and public health perspective, as guided by our medical advisors and our public health professionals, we're probably going to have the need to have a conversation as a board, but I don't see the need right now.
Great. Yep. I hope we don't get to that point. I hope that the medical advisors and the state and the CIC and the DPH can all agree on what's best for all of us so that we're not torn kind of in the middle, and we can move forward knowing that what we're doing is in the best interest of our students and our student athletes.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I do have to run them, but if anything else pops up, obviously I'm reachable at any time.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having Mark jump up to the front on that. And again, I know he's very willing to come back and speak with the board on the question Tony's raised. This is something that the superintendent's been looking at closely for a good while, probably a good 5-6 weeks. We've actually met down here several times via Zoom with the head of the CIAC to get clarity on this, as you've heard me say. I think as superintendent, I would endorse what Tony's suggesting, that if depending on where the state comes down on this, you as a board with us as administration should be talking with you about how we can truly be consistent for the well-being of our students. I do want to stress one thing, because you did hear Mark say there will be activity, there will be organized athletic activity, but I hope you also heard him say it's very truncated, it's very limited, to use a word we're now using, it's a hybrid approach. small numbers, skill work, conditioning work. And indeed, that's the very focused, delimited, truncated approach that's underway on most college campuses now. For any of you who know athletes on, let's say, just Division III New England colleges, what they're doing right now is highly limited, on campus only. So that's where Connecticut is right now. Still plenty of room to make a decision that's not running against what we'd hope for health. What we had thought about for an update right now is, and the principals have really hung in here for a good while tonight, and I appreciate that. But what we thought we'd do is, I know that Ken has a set of updates for you as a board on really the academic side of the house, and we might want to go to that first, just because the principals may be really important to that. I did want to give you sort of an update on some important work we're doing on health and safety, really to document for staff, for families, all the materials we have, all the clarity we have. And I'll come to that after Ken's done with the principals, his update. And I know Tracy definitely has the need to provide you some updates from a fall reopening. So if you're okay, we'll shift right now to Ken, the academic side of the house, then go to Tracy. Then I'll step back up on some important health and safety work we're into. And really that's communications. And I've talked to Doug Pregman today about how to work that. So I think there's some important news for you as a board in that regard. But
Great.
Ken, why don't you step up, please?
Great. So a couple updates in areas that we haven't really covered tonight. One, obviously, this is the time of the year when we're finishing up the hiring so that we staff up for the start of the year. And we will have, as of right now, we've hired 12 new staff members to fill positions either due to relocation of staff members, resignations, retirements, and we have a really great crop of new teachers coming in. The board is used to getting bios at the start of the year of our new teachers. That'll be forthcoming. Those are almost done. And I'll just give you a couple of quick highlights of positions that we've had to hire for. We have a new school psychologist at WIS, a new Project Lead the Way teacher at the high school, also another part-time Project Lead the Way physics to make a full-time position there. We have a SPED position we hired for, first grade teacher we hired for recently, a math position at the middle school. We have a guidance counselor at WHS, and today we've hired recently a part-time reading specialist, and we filled a BCBA position as well. So those are some of the highlights of positions. You'll find out about the great qualifications that these staff members have, and we're going to have a new teacher orientation on Friday. It's truncated given that it'll be via Zoom, but we will be meeting with those new teachers, getting them oriented and ready for Monday, which we're very excited about. So more to come on those bios. And then with the opening of school next week for teachers, we have the 5 days, which is very much appreciated to have that extra time. We will be sending out a schedule to staff very shortly, either late tonight or early tomorrow, on the plans that we've prepared in working with the CILs, the technology department, and our professional growth committee. There'll be time for class setup, significant amounts of technology training. When you think about the teacher toolkit, Zoom, we're going to be focusing on live streaming, that question of how you handle the kids who are in front of you, but then you also have kids who are streaming in, Canvas as a learning management system, and Seesaw as a learning management tool at the elementary level. So those are some of the key technology pieces. And then obviously there's time for curriculum work to really be ready and ramped up for the first month. And then our SPED department too, in that week with PPS, Tracy has plans where there's a lot of student planning related to IEPs and adjustments that they're making for this hybrid environment to deliver the IEP as best they can. So that's upcoming. We're excited about that. We're getting ready to greet teachers and work with them to help them be ready for students on September 8th. So that's my brief update. And certainly can answer questions on those areas, or Bill, if you want to get the full update from everyone out first.
I do have a question, Ken.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that usually we get a bio packet of the new hires. And I was wondering if I could request that amongst that information, you also include the level. I believe it's what scale from 1 to 17 for each hire, so we have where they fall on that spectrum. If you could include that information, that'd be great.
So you're looking for the column and the step? Is that it? Okay.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I don't know if Tracy's next or if Bill, who would go next?
Well, I think from anything you said, if there's anything the principals want to chime in on, I want to compliment them because they've been working very actively with parents this week, with staff as well. They've been working hard with their staff for several weeks, if not a month. I want that on the record, please. And I am actively meeting with them. I'm seeing, some good news emails from people thanking the principals for what they're doing to clarify matters. My strong belief is that's where we would get. And I was just asking people in my own mind to be patient, because once our principals started clarifying for families, I knew they would start to begin to see clarity. But I don't know if you want to add anything right now before we go to Tracy, and then we'll come back to the health and safety.
The only thing that I would just add real quickly is as Dr. McCarthy said, we did a lot of meet the admins with different groups. Tomorrow, the high school has its high school staff meet the admins. And then on Thursday, we have a new parent meet the admins. We also have frequently asked questions posted on the website. So please, if you missed any of these things, avail yourselves of the opportunity to get your questions answered.
Yeah, and we had a really great Zoom meeting today. We had almost 150 parents log on for a Meet the Admins at WIS. And we have a new family Zoom on Friday for all of our new families. And then we have a faculty one, I believe that was Thursday. So we're Zooming a lot this week.
The middle school is right there with the intermediate school, and the high school we had about the same number for our meet the admins for families. Tomorrow is our staff meet the admins, and on Thursday we will also have a special one for new families as well.
And Hurlbut as well. We had our meet the admins today. We had a very large turnout, and we have our new families on Friday. I've also encouraged families, if they have individual questions or just want to talk through, understand all of the information we've been sending out, to please reach out. It really helps sometimes if we can bring those documents to life with a family and help them through it.
As we get much more building specific communication to staff and families, how, and I guess principals can answer this, is are you getting a sense that the number of questions and concerns are going down as people get more information? Or is there still if I go back 3 weeks ago, or there's just an overwhelming number of emails, questions, concerns, confusion about certain things, as we get closer to the start date, what's your sense now? How much work do you still need to do? These are, unprecedented times. So it's not like this is a normal reopening. So just want to get a sense of just how things are progressing now as we get closer and closer to the start date.
So I can start, and feel free to jump in. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Laura. I think that getting the documents out when we did it last week, there were a lot of questions, there was a lot of anxiety. And it takes a few days to kind of look at it all and process it and really understand it and think about questions. So I found that the questions, when they were very global questions, and now they're much more specific, as people are kind of getting a deeper understanding of what this is going to look like. And I think that's important. Laura, did you want to say something before I cut you off?
That's okay, Lisa. Very similar, I think, at Hurl, but we always have questions, even throughout the year. We have, the kindergartners we're bringing into the system for the very first time. So there's always a lot of questions ongoing from kindergarten. We expect that, we anticipate it, and we welcome it. So while I think that's continuing, I agree with Lisa. I think it's as people are starting to understand and digest the information and wrap their heads around it, the questions are getting, a little more specific, definitely fewer, and now is shifting a little bit more to wanting that individual teacher information, individual class schedules at the early levels. And once our teachers come back next week and we continue to work through that with them, I think that will help families a lot. Because right now they're hearing from us, they're just anxious to hear from their individual classroom teachers. But I do think all of the information we've sent out, I did send out a virtual tour. I think the visuals help people to see us, see the building. But as you said, Tony, it's just such unique times, just even to think about, the shift in what school will look like, the orientations will look like. Once people have time to process it, they say, oh yeah, now that makes sense. I understand why it is, that's the way it is now.
I was just going to add to what Lisa said. Really, the face-to-face conversations with parents or the phone calls or the individual emails, I think really has helped, because we have overwhelmed families, I think, with tons of information. And it's hard to sift through all of the documents to find the answers that they need. I think everything is answered, it's all out there, but they just simply need to be able to have a conversation or hear it with somebody just simply explaining to them to really help us reassure them that we have done everything we can, and we will continue to do everything we can to make sure that we have a safe reopening for our students, for our staff, and that we will provide all students, whether they are hybrid in person or whether they are voluntary distance learning, with a rigorous, excellent educational program that takes into consideration their social emotional needs. We're committed to that.
And I concur with everything that everybody said. I think, I think it does take a lot. We send an awful lot of information out. And so I think that having the conversations, following up on that, I think parents understand now more about rationale for what we're doing and what the schedule is going to be looking at. So now the questions really are more about the opening. We had a lot of questions on technology, about arrival dismissal, about lunch. So the more specifics about actually being in, getting in the classroom and being in the day, teacher schedules, when they're going to get them, the more specifics is really what we're seeing now.
Are you also doing the same for staff in terms of answering questions and making sure that needs of the staff are met as well?
Yeah, so we've sent out several emails to staff. We've also did a video to show them what the classroom looked at, because we were able to set up what 12 desks look. So we're continually sending things out to our staff. And then we have a Zoom meeting with them, optional, another meeting, I think one day this week. I have to look at my calendar, whether it's Thursday or Friday. But yes, we're continually sending out information. And again, we don't want to overwhelm, so we're trying to do it in bit pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Right, is we recognize that the staff, most of the teachers don't work over the summer, but we've had optional or voluntary faculty meetings. We've sent out information to them. Just recently, I believe it was last week, we sent out the map of the middle school and where our teachers will be rotating, where their classrooms will be. And we are having our Meet the Admins again for faculty at the middle school tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Dan DeVito, can you please confirm if all of these Meet the Admin Zoom events were recorded? And if so, where can the parents find them to watch?
Yeah, Ruby, I can speak to that. The high school had been recording, the other schools had not, but going forward, they will do that. And then we just weren't recording, but now going forward, we will. I reached out to the principals today to clarify that recommendation.
I think only half of the high school meeting was recorded, Lisa? I think.
Well, the reason the high school meeting got recorded was because I did not update my Zoom account. I apologize. People were locked out. It kind of turned into a little bit of a free for all, but it was all resolved in 10 minutes, believe it or not. I had no assistant. I didn't resolve it. It was Dan DeVito and Mark, but that's kind of why it ended up getting videoed.
Yeah, it was handled very well, by the way, and quickly.
So now the word is out. We can certainly post the videos. And again, sorry about my lack of technology with Zoom.
So I know I questioned this earlier when we were creating the COVID-19 resource page for our families. Since I'm hearing most of the principals are creating these communications that are staff specific, do we have some place that those are kind of housed for easy reference for our staff so that they have a way of, look, not everybody goes through their email every day and an email can get missed. Do we have an easy, accessible page for them to go to have access to everything they may have missed?
I can speak on that. So we don't have one set up right now, but we are going to be setting up what's called Google Team Drives. So they're going to be locations for us to put information. So for instance, we're in the process of creating a professional learning team drive with resources, and we can do that for all other communications.
That would be great, Dan, if possible. I just feel like, I forget which of our admins said it, there's just been so much information, and we have a nice house for our families, and it would be nice if we can offer a comparable resource to staff as well.
Absolutely, you are correct. Information flies fast and furious, so organizing it as best as we can for everybody is a good idea.
Thank you.
We did have the district wide session on Zoom for the faculty and staff, and there were a lot of questions that were answered at that time that had been submitted. Some funneled through principals. I know I received several from my staff that were funneled in and were answered in that session.
Yeah, there is a lot of overlap in the content, so we still are trying to have everyone use the COVID-19 resource page as a place to go, so we don't have to do double entries. But I think what Dan's speaking to is then, well, thank you, Dan Doak, but also Dan DeVito speaking to something more staff specific. But we have so much of it similar. We're trying to have it as a one-stop because that helps us manage it better. If we have too many places to go, we can not get things filled out as we should or keep it updated.
Yeah, I was able to participate in 2 out of the 4 Meet the Admins, and I thought they went wonderfully. I was incredibly impressed with the breadth of information we were able to cover, whether using the chat feature or however the questions were coming in. You know, the community received a lot of content. I think it would be useful, and don't hate me for suggesting this, but I think it might be useful to consider maybe doing a similar round of these week 2, week 3 of the reopen, so that, you know, any kind of hiccups or questions that arise, we might have the ability to address in such an influential and efficient manner. So I'll throw that out there.
I think that's a great idea. And I also want to commend everyone for your patience. I know there were some families, and I just want to encourage families who are listening to read all the documentation that went out, because there were a lot of questions that have been really explicitly put out there to families in multiple documents. And so if you feel like you're in the dark and you have 1,000 questions, you know, hopefully 980 of them are answered in the documentation, and we save these sessions for the real ones that are unclear. So I agree with you, Melissa. Be good to do that in week 2.
The only other thing that comes to mind is, as we enter into these next critical weeks into something that has never been done before, I would also urge all the building principals or whatever to give feedback to us, to the board, as to what else we should be thinking about that you may think we're not thinking about. So, what are our blind spots? So I believe in 360 feedback. So, please do so.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Victor. And on that same note, I think, we had a Board of Ed Q&A a few weeks back with respect to the reopening. And, I think maybe these are good opportunities with this, whether it's a Zoom platform, especially since we can't have visitors in the building. Even when we go back to having full live Board of Ed meetings, we still can't have the public attending. That, it's very easy to set up these types of Q&As or public comment periods and things. So whether it's building specific for questions related to the reopening, or maybe it's district-wide questions and questioning for the board, and we should set up another one of those. But I think what we're really seeing is that the public wants to hear from us and wants to understand what's going on and what the decision making is. So more communication, I think, is better than less. So let's think about that and do that in a thoughtful way.
Yeah, Melissa, I think, as we reopen, quite frankly, I think that there's going to be a lot of questions as we execute the reopening. And I think that's one of the agenda items tomorrow for the task force, is to actually reorient ourselves to not focusing on reopening plans, but focusing on basically status of the things that are going well, things that we need to improve, and then the glide path to pivoting to easing things or moving things back, depending on the public health situation as we go into the fall. So I think the questions are not going to stop. In fact, as we start executing on reopening, I anticipate there's going to be a lot of questions. And so we need to be prepared for that as well. We're not going to, I think we'll breathe a bit of a sigh of relief on September 8th, and then quickly need to, I think, enter into a new phase where there's going to be tons of questions going forward. And that's just the way things are going to be this fall.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely, Tony.
Do you want me to swing over to the health and safety piece?
Sure.
I keep being the guy at the party wearing the dour face. Health and safety, the good news there is that all the questions the staff's worried about and asking, they're asking all the right questions, all their concerns are in the exact right place. We have it all written down across multiple documents. So I've been in the midst of creating an old-fashioned but digital manual that puts in one place everything related to health and safety. And so it's going to include everything from social distancing, mask requirements, hand washing, home health checks, all as your own little categories. You go to one place, we have it organized, you can find it. If you're ill at school, what happens? School visitors, put it all there. Audience and spectators, it's all in this document. Self-quarantine, what happens? It's in this document. I mean, we've written all this down in multiple places, and the state is picking up their pace. Just yesterday, they sent us the answers to safety drills. So that will show up here because that's a question. How do we handle safety drills, fire drills, lockdowns, et cetera? Questions about ventilation, facilities, that'll be in here. So we're working on that to get it in one place. As some of you know, our teachers have been very worried and they've been expressing that. So today, in reaching out to Doug Pregman and on this health and safety issue, he offered his help. I said, great, Doug, I'm going to take you up on it. So when this rough draft is ready, and it was supposed to be done today, but work keeps getting in the way, I'm going to send, at the same time I send it to the assistant principals, who by design are the building COVID-19 liaisons. I'm the district-wide COVID-19 liaison, and this kind of health and safety manual is the exact work of your liaisons. Same time I send it to the assistant principals in very rough form, I'm going to send it to Doug, who's going to send it to each of the 2 teachers in the 4 buildings who several weeks ago were identified as part of the planning group in each of the buildings, excuse me. So they're going to look at it. Assistant principals are going to look at it, give me feedback. So that by the time we hit next week, we have this ready. Also on Thursday, voluntary, there'll be a follow-on district-wide forum through Zoom for all staff on questions and issues of health and safety. It'll be 90 minutes, and several of us will just answer question after question after question, trying to help as much as we can put people at ease that we have been planning actively all summer, and we're doing all we can to assure a healthy and safe return. A big part of that is that our buildings are ready. And Phil, as you've heard, working with Mike DelMastro, working very carefully with custodians and very much with the principals, are trying to have our buildings as ready as possible. So when teachers, and some have started to come in voluntary this week, but certainly when they come in next week, the buildings look as ready as possible. A district not far from us, and the super shared the open problems, said that some part of that district was ready for teachers. Other parts, they had all the stuff, but it wasn't visible to teachers when they walked in to that particular school. So within that district, you had some teachers very, very concerned, saying, hey, I've been hearing about all this work on health and safety, but now I'm not seeing it when I walk into the building. Elsewhere in the district, they did have it ready. And so this is where it's helpful supers are talking. We're sharing all our mistakes, wounds, all the rest. So Friday, I talked to Phil, and Phil said, yes, I'm on it, Bill. And working with the principals is try and have all parts of our district as ready as possible on that Monday when teachers come in just for their prep week. Patience still will matter because we've not done all of this before, but those are the kinds of things Phil mentioned. You having in place hand sanitizers, all the rest. Desk shields, if we don't have them in, a sign up saying you can anticipate your desk shield as of this date so that they know that we're paying attention to these things. But I thought it was very important that Doug and I came to a meeting of the minds to say, here's a way that we can work with each other and help each other. Because we are a leaner team in the central office, and that's fine. And it was good that he said, how can we help? Now, again, to be the stern guy at the party, some things that people may want, we can't do. And I said to Doug, great, I'll listen to the ideas, but most of this is going right back to Mark Cooper, because that's where we've gone for everything, and to Laura Marks. And if they're comfortable with it and sign off, we do it. So for example, one of the big concerns and questions will be, if we have COVID-19 exposure, how are we going to know about it? How specifically will we know about it? All of that's written down. It's actually Mark Cooper wrote it. And so that'll be front and center in the manual, but that could be a place where parents or staff say, hey, we want to know more. We already have the answer, and it's a Mark Cooper answer tied to how they will guide us through that process. Now, having said that, we've already in our region had people back in the district preparing where you had COVID-19 exposure. And so in a district not too far from here, one school's leadership team and the superintendent are now on self-quarantine because of COVID-19 exposure. And Mark Cooper had to get very active with that in that process, which leads me to something that may have come up earlier in the meeting. Wilton's going through a lot right now. Class of 2021, excited, a whole bunch of rising seniors got together, did not social distance, did not have masks on, and all the supers were communicating about this Sunday night. That's how tight we all are. 9:30, 10 p.m. we're communicating about this. And Kevin Smith, wonderful superintendent, very concerned because the teachers are so worried about students coming in who may mean well, but they're carrying with them COVID-19, either asymptomatic or symptomatic. And so it's in the public record right now that Wilton's going through some soul searching. They've had a key meeting tonight. I don't know the results of that, but my plea, and now there's a meeting of the board in public, some people may be listening. My plea is that about 4 weeks ago, we sent out this thing called Weston Commitment. Some people liked it, some people didn't, but it was very specific. It was asking us all to have conversations in our families about what's it mean to keep each other safe. And in this incredibly fragile, complex situation we're in, Because look what Wilton's gone through for all the hard work. Look what this neighboring district's gone through. Suddenly, whole leadership group on quarantine, that it's so fragile. Look what's happening in Danbury now. That this starts with us, but it starts at home. So it's critical that those conversations happen about wearing masks, keeping distance. And a lot of us as parents, it's a tough issue. We get it. We know it's a tough issue because we're asking people to do things that they just don't want to do. We are social people, and especially our adolescents and our young people are social people. So we just got to keep doing what we can to remind people to play by these rules, wearing the mask, keeping the distance, because otherwise it's going to spill right into the schools, and we're seeing it in our neighboring towns. So that's where we are. That's the update. If there are questions, comments, thoughts, I just wanted to share that last little piece.
I took advantage to multitask a little bit. It's being reported that Wilton decided to still continue to open on August 31st, but be fully remote on August 31st, and plan to resume their hybrid plan on September 8th.
And I think, again, a large school system, large high school, the roots of that may have been in a relatively small number of people. But we know now how contagious this situation is for us. And as another super said to Kevin Sunday night, there goes all of us potentially in this very, very fragile situation. You're muted, Tony.
I said this is just an example of the fact that we're just going to need to be prepared to adapt as the situations arise. Because we really don't know what we're going to be facing in the fall.
And we've not talked about it tonight, but Ken and the principals and everyone, they're very focused on if the change on a dime isn't to remote or distance learning.
Yeah.
We will be ready. We will be ready.
At what point, Bill, will we be ready to share if we are forced into going to full remote, what a basic, simple schedule? Because, we've all said we know it's going to be beefed up over what it was in the spring, but when will we be prepared to share even basic outlines of what that might look like?
And an added question to that, if you don't mind, Gina, is what is the trigger? What needs to happen in order for us to be switching to that?
Well, I can start with the trigger part because that's really a health question. And I think there's some vagueness to the answer, which nobody likes, but it's in the materials we have. Once we know we have a confirmed COVID-19 exposure, because what's going to happen, and this is Mark Cooper and Laura Mark's big caution, as you know, COVID-19 presents like the flu. And so you could have things that look like COVID-19 or not. So when we think we have the exposure and we have a whole system in place, I've worked on it with Cheryl's nurse coordinator, worked on it with the assistant principals. We'll move fast to find out what we know, get that information to Mark Cooper, then he begins to work fast on, is this indeed COVID-19 exposure or the flu? Once we know it's COVID-19 exposure, then we have to determine how far spread it is, or the contacts, excuse me, and are the contacts far enough that he may say you need to close a building or part of a building or a cohort, or yes, you need to close the entire district. It's a sobering story right now coming out of Wilton, because as far as I know, that was 40 students in a fairly big high school, fairly isolated, but it shows you the numbers involved. Danbury's sobering because I think it's about 197 cases across the town. They are up to about 7%. You know that 10% is the figure the state's given us, is swinging from what they think would be full reopening into hybrid. But you can see where Danbury's already gone. But the simple answer is, and we're preparing for this with the assistant principals and the nurses, as soon as we know of something that is either looks to be COVID-19 or is, we have the child or staff go home, We have the testing done. We begin immediately working with Mark Cooper, understand the extent of contact. So when, if it is COVID-19, then that leads us to what triggers us to shift our operating mode. And again, whether it's very localized within the district or it's district-wide. Now, the distance learning question, when we're ready to do that, or remote, Ken, why don't you speak to that?
Yeah, so the schedules, you will see more synchronous learning. You'll see, you know, in comparison to last spring, longer classes. The schedule at the middle school and the high school, Lisa and Dan can go into more detail on what they're thinking, as well as Patty and Laura at the K-5. But that was one of the things that we you know, are planning in this if we get into distance learning again. That those classes are going to be more robust in that respect. So I don't know if any of the principals want to add, but that's essentially the commitment.
Yeah, I mean, I can just add that when we looked at the secondary schedules, we took the feedback from the parents and the kids' focal groups. The classes are going to be 50 minutes, which is an increase in the time. And we also have the department blocks in the afternoon, 2 departments a day, an hour apiece, so that different types of instructional tasks, assessments, guest speakers, things like that can be done. So we have a solid plan, right, Mr. Doak?
Yeah, I was just going to remind everybody that part of our summer work was to develop the plans that we submitted to the state. And as part of that process, we had to develop plans for the hybrid, the full opening, and the full on distance learning. So those plans are there. It's that overwhelming amount of information that people have had access to, but it is posted. If you look at the district website, there is our state submission plan. In the appendix, you can find more of the specific details of what those plans will look like.
And at the elementary levels, we are looking at a lot more live instruction throughout the day, every day. Students will have a full schedule. The difference with the primary grade is that, you know, I've gotten a lot of questions and concerns from families about would we expect their child to sit in front of a screen for 7 hours a day, every day. And it's just not developmentally appropriate for the youngest of. But we do have new platforms we're using this year that we're excited about. We think will be a little more interactive for the students and easier for them to navigate, so that they're able to go in and out of the technology much easier than what we had in the spring. In the spring, we had Google Classroom. It was what we had, so we used it. Dan DeVito has been so helpful with us in exploring new resources and some tools he was familiar with. And we are going to be launching Seesaw this year, which is much more user-friendly and easier to navigate for the very youngest learners. So we do anticipate that a lot of the navigating of the technology, which of course will be a balance with other work they will have, will be much easier at the primary level. But, you know, with the middle school, I'm sorry, the intermediate school, Patty and I have talked about schedules being much more robust and at daily basis and full class schedules.
Right. So at our level, the same, pretty much following on Laura, really following pretty much a schedule as if they were back in school. So much more live interaction with students, being able to use that Zoom now, having those breakout room sessions, but also being very mindful about how much time we're really asking students to be online. So we're really making sure we have that balance. But it'll be much more robust, much more interactive than what it was in the spring.
Bill, can you remind me or refresh my memory on the cadence for the metrics? I thought they were going to be weekly, right? The per 100,000 in Fairfield County. I haven't seen anything come across there. Is it going to be every Thursday, every Friday? Where do we stand versus the next trip point?
Yeah, it's coming out late every Thursday. I thought I sent you last week. It's come out twice now. The second one I sent you was a big email bundle. I'm quite sure I sent it because I also just forwarded on to the task force. I can resend it. But the good news is the state put it into a single portal, and you go into the portal and you're not just getting that weekly report, but in the portal you can look at the larger analytical guidance. And, you know, so the latest, there are a variety of ways to look at it, but there are 3 categories: low, moderate, high. Low favors more in-person learning, moderate favors the hybrid learning, high favors remote learning. And their leading indicator would be the new COVID-19 cases per 100,000 population on a 7-day average. They strongly urge any one community not to do their own math on that because the N gets so small, the validity and reliability is not great. They do it by county. That's as micro as they drill it is by county. So Fairfield in the first week was at 2.6 on that leading indicator, 2.6 cases out of 100,000. Then last week we moved up to 3.3. And again, I didn't give you this, but a marker between low to moderate is 10 cases. So, and then the marker between moderate and high is 25 cases. So that's why I referenced Danbury. You're filling in some good questions, Victor. You're helping me fill out information. I said Danbury got up to about 7 new cases per 100,000, and that was enough for them. And I think they're seeing just how rapid fire this gets. I think their view was it's going to quickly move beyond 7, and that's why they went with the full remote decision a few days ago. But this is important, and it's important for our teachers to hear this. They had to get permission from the commissioner to do that. You cannot just go right now, you cannot just go into full distance learning without special permission because the state is still, rightly so, we should be proud of where we are in this incredible crisis. And the state's saying, hey, we're still doing well enough to have most of your children back in school. You know, they've said hybrid is probably the smart way to go, but you still got to go get special permission to go into a full distance learning mode. I can resend that if for some reason it didn't get to you. And we are looking to post it up on the COVID-19 resource page so that anyone can go and see that weekly data. And I just would urge anyone listening, please look at it through the portal and don't just look at that week, but look at how they're guiding us to look at it. Because final comment, there are 3 medical indicators, if you will, health indicators. The 4th major indicator is how's your district doing at the mitigating strategies? How you doing at the mask wearing? How you doing at your social distancing? How you doing at the cleaning? Because those are, you know, if they're stumbling there, and I think that kind of relates to maybe a question almost an hour ago or so from Ruby, that there's a district that had to go to distance learning. I think it was Ruby, didn't you bring it up, a New Jersey district? In a sense, different system, though this thing came out of Harvard Public Health, so maybe New Jersey's using the same thing. That 4th big area, it sounds like that district struggled with. So that's why they had to shift their mode, if I'm being clear. Well, Dan and I'll make sure it's, DeVito and I'll make sure it's up on the COVID-19 resource page, and we'll refresh it for everybody when we get it, and you as a board will get it almost immediately from me.
So did Tracy have additional information to share?
Sure, I can share an update. I'll keep it brief, but you might remember less than 2 weeks ago, we received very significant guidance from the state, along with a plan that we are expected to complete for each of our special education students, outlining how we're going to provide the services that are documented in that child's IEP, which is a departure from what plans looked like in the spring, where we were working under the language of to the greatest extent possible. Right now, that only applies to voluntary distance learning. All of the other IEPs we're expected to implement, knowing that we're implementing, though, in a variety of different models. Maybe some services will now be remote instead of in person, or maybe in a small group instead of push-in, or vice versa. Since we've received that guidance and that plan, there's been a lot of work happening at the district level. There was communication with all of the building leaders about that guidance and the implications for that guidance. Our team leaders, we have team leaders within the special education PPS department. They gathered quickly and devoted some time over the summer to work on some model plans at each level, which I think will be really helpful to staff. Just today, we had a parent roundtable, which was well attended. We stepped through that addendum 6 guidance and also showed a sample learning model IEP implementation plan. I'm actually running another session at a different time of day later this week to hopefully capture some families who weren't able to attend that. And staff, as you can imagine, have a lot of questions about the guidance. It's complicated. They were gathering a number of questions in a shared Google document over the past approximately week and a half. I just sent out responses to those questions tonight. And of course, families have been reaching out with questions about what this guidance means for their individual student, which, you know, as I've said in previous meetings, is completely understandable. I know why families want that level of detail. It's going to look very different for each student. So one of the things that we are doing, staff officially return next week, and Ken alluded to this in his earlier presentation. There is a significant amount of time in that professional development week that is being devoted to the development of learning model IEP implementation plans and also communication with families. I will tell you though, and I've been as transparent as I possibly can in every parent communication, we have a significant number of plans to get through. And it's not just a matter of, you know, me sitting and writing plans. We need input from case managers. We need input from related service providers. And a lot of that work is going to happen next week. I do expect that that work is going to continue into the beginning of the school year. I expect that those conversations with families will continue until the beginning of the school year. And I also anticipate, like everything else that we're talking about, that we might need to make adjustments for students. You know, we might think at the onset that, wow, this service would be great to implement in person. And then maybe we realize, actually, no, we should be prioritizing this other period for in-person, and we should try to do that remotely. So there's going to be a lot of ongoing conversations. I think we answered a lot of general questions in round 1, sorry about that, of the parent roundtable today. It will be the exact same presentation later this week. And I just encourage everyone to be patient. We are working on this. We are thinking about it. There are lots of layers, not just within the plans, but in terms of staffing and transportation. We will be in communication with individual families. Case managers will be taking the lead on that. I think we've made good progress, and there's still a ways to go. So that's a general PPS special education update for right now.
Thanks, Tracy. Bill, anything else?
In terms of the update, I think we've covered everything on the list. I hope this has been thorough for you. I think we've covered most everything.
It's been very thorough, and just shows just the amount of hard work that continues to go on as we approach the reopening. I think the key words I've heard tonight are collaboration and patience, and that really is that's important to keep in mind right now. Any other questions from the board?
Are we going to talk about, like, and I'm sorry, it's been a long day, the structure of our new meetings, about in person for these new meetings, all that?
Yep, that's coming up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Thank you.
So anything Supers report, anything, Bill, to add on that?
There's a super team here that's done super good work, and I appreciate all the super support from the board for them. And your words mean a lot. This is a trying time. So that is a super report. And
Right.
sincerely, super job by all of my good colleagues in the district. I deeply, deeply appreciate it. That's your supers report.
Great. Committee reports, anything from the committee chairs?
Finance, I think everybody realizes how swamped Phil has been with closing out last year, figuring out how to open up this year. But Phil, we do have to get budget recap and budget planning on the schedule. So if you and I just want to chat sometime over the next week and start figuring out when we're going to get that done.
Or we can have a conversation next week. Okay with you?
I'll give you a call.
Thank you.
On facilities, I don't know if you all remember, a long time ago, we did a phase 2 facility study. And then we kind of moved it over to a town process to look at facilities optimization, in the context of overall town planning. That group has come up with a few ideas. I absolutely do not want to burden the board with a lot of extra work, but I thought it might be a good idea at this point for the chair and the vice chair of that group to come to our facilities committee meeting in September, just to update us on what's going on with the townwide committee and next steps. Again, I've, there's just so much to do right now, but I thought that it would be a good time to get updated. With respect to CABE, I've been dialing into their weekly meetings where the board chairs talk about their reopening plans, and also have been communicating with other board chairs in the surrounding districts. Without going into details, I have to tell you that what we're talking about here is exactly what everybody else is talking about and doing with respect to planning, discussions, pros and cons of each plan, communication, issues related to parents and staff. It's just everyone is challenged with absolutely the same set of topics that we are, without going into detail. So we're definitely not alone. I know Bill talks about the superintendent's group really talking about the same things. Well, the board chairs are talking about exactly the same things as well. So, which brings us to the next scheduled meeting is on September 21st. I guess that might be changed to the 22nd, but not yet. And now let's talk about the meeting structure, because one of the things that we talked about was it's September to kind of move to a meeting structure consistent with the way in which we're reopening. And so the proposal really for the September meeting is to actually go back into the building with the appropriate social distancing. We will not have the public attending, because the campus is closed to the public till at least January. We will basically have public comment through electronic means. The meeting would be streamed live. Board members and administration would basically have the option of opting out and doing it remotely. So, to as much as we can to have it consistent with the hybrid plan in which students and staff are going back to school. Bill, did I miss any of the specific details?
There is a memo in the packet. I'd emailed the board about 4 o'clock, and then Meredith was able to post it, so it's there publicly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you hit the main points. That we're trying to be what we'd call a hybrid. I think it maps with what some other districts are doing. So your board would be present, 6 foot apart, masks. You'd have the cabinet plus, as needed, the principals, and as needed leadership team members. You would not have the public in attendance. They would be observing via Zoom and the live streaming. That matches the experience for students. And that we're not allowing parents or others into the buildings until, or we keep reviewing it, but most likely until January. So that would be your monthly meetings. It allows to be in person. You're modeling this, what the staff are experiencing, et cetera. So I think symbolically that's important. I also did speak to the committee meetings. So you want, I think after you talk about your monthly meetings, take a moment and talk about your committee meetings. That's also in the memo. And I've asked the principals to sign off because they put in a really long day. So I've noticed departed. I gave them the green light to move on. I hope you're okay with that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to keep the committee meetings on Zoom. It's not, I mean, it's not because I think it's just the burden of just having more people in buildings and having, you know, more cleaning responsibilities than you otherwise would. You know, otherwise, I don't think it would be a problem coming into a building and being socially distanced in committee meetings. But to the extent that we're not adding an extra burden to the staff for committee meetings, I don't see the reason to have those.
Actually, from a space standpoint, we don't have a space for committees to meet and still have the adequate social distancing. I mean, we just don't have that. So you'd have to be going into schools and find a room, which would not be appropriate. The question for the committee meetings is, on the Zoom platform, we have the ability to record. I know there were some meetings last year. I remember committee members saying, gosh, this was such a good meeting in terms of the content. It might've been good to record it, but that's a decision for you as a board, whether you want to record those. The minutes are taken and they're put up in the public record, but the actual technical recording had not been occurring. So that's a question for you. And then we'd have to sort out with our exciting resident expert, Dan DeVito, on how the committee meetings, while Zoomed, are accessible to the public and how that's managed. But if you ask us to figure that out, we would figure that out. I do know we're reticent to let Zoom just open up without strong moderation on it, because while Zoom has put stronger controls on, there are still issues out there that can be very disruptive.
Yeah.
But
well, we would have to make committee meetings open to the public in some form, right? By Zoom.
Yeah. So in the least, you could live stream it,
right?
You know, or if we think we can manage Zoom, given its small numbers that would tie in, you could open up Zoom. But I'd want to talk that through with not just Dan, but the cabinet members who'd be staffing you, and how we staff you with an assistant. We'd want to talk with them to make sure they're comfortable managing the Zoom for the committee meetings. For your board meetings, you've got a combination of Meredith and Dan DeVito managing it for your board meetings.
Only question about the monthly board meetings. Obviously, in the middle school library, we have the space to spread out to be socially distanced and all that stuff. My concern is, you know, tonight we're finishing up at 9 o'clock. You're going to have the building cleaned after we leave at that time. So is there an extra expense having the crew stay that late? I'm leery about starting our meetings earlier because of trying to accommodate, you know, families in Weston at work. That's just a question, because obviously the building would need to be cleaned after we leave.
Yeah, and during budget season, those meetings run a little later than 9.
Phil, do you have a thought on the question? We did talk about it.
No, we did. I want to say that if our FINICA should still be in the building, and for those extra days, the one night per month that we do meet, we could have a conversation with a FINICA just to have additional staff in there for that one night. just for an extra hour or so, just to do a quick clean in, not a quick clean in, but a thorough clean in of that space. So we do have some flexibility. It's just a matter of what our ultimate decision is and what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, I would say this, I would want an estimate, because if we're trying to contain costs, as much as I would love to see all of you in person, I would want to know the price tag before I make a choice. And Tony brought up a very valid point. Once we hit budget season, we have a significant, we don't just have one meeting a month.
Right.
We have a significant number of meetings. So I would want to know what it's going to cost us to meet in person.
I will also add, from a technology perspective, we have to take a look at the space and make sure that we have the technology, or if we have to purchase technology for in-person meetings, meaning it's not as simple as we are doing with the Zoom meeting. We have to make sure we have cameras that are set up. We have to make sure we have an audio system that feeds back so that we could stream everything on YouTube Live, because you don't want to have a meeting that you can see everybody, but you can't hear anybody. So there's other pieces that we have to build into that. I just want to make everyone aware of that, that is also going to be part of the process.
Yeah. Well, let's, this is our plan, but let's get that information. And then, you know, we can always, as we get closer to that date, we can always amend our plans, right?
I mean, if you're doing it just to be symbolic, I get it, but you're adding another dozen people in the building and we don't really need to do it.
That's, you know, listen, that's, you know, for everyone to have a view on, right? And ultimately we can, you know, go with the consensus view on this, right?
Here's my out of the box proposal, right? So we use our existing technology like we're doing right now, but we take our computers to wherever that place is. I understand the senior center is not open and it's closed off. You know, is there a room big enough in the senior center where we can be 6 feet apart and bring our own computers?
That's a great idea, Victor, but I will also say feedback.
Yeah.
You'll have major feedback issues if you do that. If we're 6 feet away, we don't all have, you know, headphones on or whatever. It's going to get there's going to be a lot of echo.
Let's make it simple. You know, if it works at the middle school, you know, I don't think we should be looking for alternative space. It's either going to be the middle school or we do it like this. You know, let's not, you know, don't want to kill too many brain cells having to really worry about this too much, but you know, it's fine like this. I think that we should be going back into the building at some point. But you know, I appreciate everyone's view on this as well. Hillary, you're concerned about more people in the building?
I'm just saying, we said we wouldn't allow parents in the building. We're really limiting the number of people. We're another 7 people, and then you get administrators. And by the time you get done, like, it's an unnecessary extra amount of people when we have this venue that we're using that's functional. So like, I don't see the point of the risk is my assessment of it. That's
I think,
right now.
I think from what I heard parents say on social media, and I don't know, Ruby maybe read it as well, but is that, you know, if we're sending everyone back to school, students and teachers, then we should also be in school. We can't have the luxury of safety and of our living rooms and Zoom for our meetings. We should be doing the same and going into school and representing the same courage that the teachers are representing by going back to school. And I respect that. So if it costs a little bit more, I mean, I guess, you know, I don't want to add bodies to the school to increase risk. but I don't want to nickel and dime and say, well, it's going to cost us a little bit more to clean up after us. I do understand the parents' request that we walk the walk.
I'm not trying to not walk the walk. This is no luxury, by the way, but I think that, if we're trying to mitigate risk as much as possible, we've been able to do it in this forum. Like, we're now adding, more bodies to that building that we're really trying to limit. So, I just can't really see, I don't see why it's worth the risk right now.
Mhm.
And on the finance side, I mean, we have to nickel and dime every decision we make. And I don't think this one is any different.
Well, Phil, why don't you find out what the cost is of every time we, if any, every time we meet. And Dan, if there's, because of the fact that the technology is a bit different this year, when you assess the feasibility of and the cost of doing this,
Absolutely.
and we can poll between now and the next meeting. We can poll everyone, but I'm getting a sense that we have a mixed view.
I think we should have our monthly board meetings in person, and I think we should have our committee meetings as is.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming out. But let's see. Gina's points are valid. Let's just
Yep, it's worth exploring.
let's just do that work and see that. But I'm kind of in Taffy's camp. Hillary, I understand as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should meet in person. The only thing though that I would say is it's really going to depend on what Dan DeVito comes back with, because I feel like we are so incredibly productive on these Zoom calls. Everyone can hear everyone can see everyone, meaning the public. And if memory serves me correctly, that's not the case when we meet in the library, where we get a lot of feedback that those microphones do not transmit, don't just transmit well. So I think Dan, you're just going to have to do a bottoms up for us, just in terms of just to get us where we need to be to have a successful meeting.
Absolutely. And if you're really smart, you could even get in dinner as well during a meeting.
All right.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is next steps is Phil's going to run some costs regarding cleaning. Dan DeVito will do some tech checking on whether the space would work for streaming, so the public could actually not just see what you're doing, but hear what you're doing. And so we'll look at those two pieces, try and figure that out. I mean, we've got a little time, but we won't lag on it. We do have something called school opening. So it might take us, I'd say, another week or two to get those answers.
I think it's sort of back of the envelope. Let's you don't have to go crazy.
That's fine. Okay. Good. Well, I think we have our marching orders as to what to do, what to figure out, and how to get back to you on it.
Great. Really productive evening. Thank you, everyone.
Did you need to shift that date of meeting, Tony?
I think I think Meredith has
he's taking care of that?
Yeah, she's taking care of that right now.
All right.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Like I said, really productive evening. Anything else from any of the board members? Okay. If not, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Good luck to everybody on September 8th. We'll be rooting for everyone.
Great. Thank you. All right. Be well.
Second that, Tony.
Great.
Or no, so moved.
Okay. Second. Second. Great. Okay. Thanks everyone, and have a good night. Meeting adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.